Good evening, or good afternoon, excuse me, and welcome to the Buncombe County Board of Education special call meeting for Thursday, April the 30th. Our mission here is to foster a culture of excellence and continuous improvement where every student will thrive and learn from exceptional educators. Our vision is for every student to graduate on time, prepared to pursue their chosen path as critical thinkers and collaborative leaders in a diverse society. Certainly here today to hear a lot of great presentations. Thank you all to all of our staff who have poured a lot of time and effort into preparing this budget and constantly work on three budgets at a time, I think is the way Tina refers to it. So with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Jackson. Thanks.
Good morning, board members. Good morning to our team. I want to echo our chairman's comments in that I'm very grateful and appreciative of all of the work that has gone into the presentations we'll hear today, all the work that's gone into doing our best to present a budget for your consideration at the May meeting. As you know, there is much we don't know. We do know we're the only state in the country without a state budget. That certainly impacts our budgeting ability. We do know that the cost of living continues to rise. That impacts our ability to recruit and retain our teachers. And we also know that we are blessed to serve over 21,000 incredible young people. And as we consider the weight of that responsibility, I'm so very proud of the hard work of our team to understand those needs, to do all that we can to resource our schools to be able to serve those needs. And I'm extremely grateful for all of the feedback and input of our board members. This has been a very collaborative process. You will see throughout the presentation from our Chief Finance Officer that your input has been woven throughout the budget presentation we'll have today. So again, thank you to all who've been involved in this. And I never want to fail to say thank you to our teachers and staff in our schools who are doing the incredible work they do every single day. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Okay, I believe we're ready for Tina.
Good afternoon, Chairman Elliott, members of the board, and Dr. Jackson. We're going to do our agenda today. We're going to start with the facilities report, and I will cover the enrollment trends and calculations, and then I will turn it over to Clark Wyatt, our maintenance and facility director, who will talk about the long-range planning section of that. And then this will be followed up by the capital outlay budget presentation. And then we'll take a short break after the capital outlay budget presentation before we move into the local operational budget request. So I wanted to give you a little heads up of how the order will be. So this is our 25-26 annual facilities and enrollment report that we put together every year to try to facilitate and understand the trends and what's happening with our enrollment, and then what kind of needs that brings up on our facilities. So the first thing we'll start with is our membership and population trends. So the first thing that we do is we go out and gather all the permits. And we gather all the permits looking at commercial, residential, single family, multifamily, all kinds of any type of permit that's out there. Then we start dissecting it into regions and figuring out by our attendance zones where these multifamily residents, single family residents are being populated and approved during the county's process. This, keep in mind, shows the residential building permits, and that could be multifamily or single families. And we also have noticed, always in the past, the South Asheville area had a tremendous amount of growth happening with townhomes and apartments and residential movements. What we noticed last year was the North Buncombe end had a lot of permits, and you'll see that in the next slide. And then this year, we've noticed there's an increase in permits in 3 of the 6 districts, very large increases. So we have Reynolds District with 274 permits that were issued during the 25-26 year. We have the Inca district that had 512 residential permits issued. And then the Robertson district, once again, had 290 more permits of residential permits issued. So it is now apparent that we're seeing growth across the whole entire county of residential permits that may or may not end up producing student age population, but we're trying to track all of that. And just to mention, we are in the middle of a third-party school camp, ORED, doing a thorough investigation of the trends and the population and the facility study as well. So that will be presented on May 7th to you all in open public session. So I'm anxious to see how this all compares, because we've been doing these each year, trying to determine the student enrollment. So this is broken out a little more. It shows by district the top 5 growth in each of the districts. So Fairview jumped from 105 to 118. Irwin, what's interesting about it is it's spread out through each of the areas within that district. They had 271 permits issued for residential, but you can see how it's spread among the different areas within Irwin. North Buncombe, there's a decline that happened in the Weaverville Primary Elementary, but remember, as I stated, there was a tremendous jump last year, 311. So that's why it's highlighted, to show how much growth we've had the last 2 years in that area of the apartments, townhomes, and residential permits. And that usually takes more than a year to actually get those built and see what the population actually resides within those residential homes. Owen is, you can see W.D. Williams jumped, the Williams area, from 58 to 141. And so we are currently addressing that through the W.D. Williams project that you're going to see in a minute, that talks about we're adding on classrooms there and redoing that entire facility, really. And then in the Inca district, the Hominy Valley jumped from 38 to 128 of residential permits. So tremendous growth there, and the type of residential units that you're going to be seeing going up. And then in the Robertson district, Avery's Creek had a huge increase last year, and still showing growth at 130 more this year. So we keep track of what type of student, if there's students that actually end up in those units. Now, I'm going to dig a little bit into the weeds, and I want to explain that this methodology that we've used several years, many years, 20 plus years of digging into this, is not the same methodology that we have created and built within our allotment model that you will hear about when we discuss the allotment model. This is looking back at a cohort progression survival rates and averaging them out. This is an example of Fairview since 1997, kindergarten through 5th grade. This is the actual best one of 2 of their population. And then you can see highlighted from yellow, that cohort went from like 138 to 144 to 134 to 124 to 117. Over here on the right-hand side, it's calculating a cohort survival rate. And then in the last 3 bottom lines, or rows, you will see that we average it for the most recent 10 years. We also average for the most recent 6 years, and the average for the most recent 3 years. We used the most recent 10 years. That used to hold very true to our population and how trends happen. In moving forward, I'm going to move to the most recent 3 years or 6 years, because since COVID happened in the pandemic years, you will see in the next chart how our population, our ADM, has changed. And so 10 years is skewing our true trends that have happened in the last 5 to 6 years. But we did continue building it on a 10-year average this year. So what this slide shows you is very important. The first column that's labeled 2526 is our current population of those schools. Then what is very important to compare this to, and so using the methodology that we had just shown you, it builds out our projected 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 5-year projection there. But this is based around a functional capacity, a NC-DPI capacity, and a theoretical or Common Core capacity. What we have always used is the functional capacity, because that's the type of spaces that is based on classrooms within the brick and mortar, not modulars. Modulars are not counted into the functional capacity. So that this process tells us what areas we need to pay attention to for moving forward with looking at our long-range planning around the facilities that may be at capacity. So there's a few on here that we need to keep an eye on, and we're already addressing a couple of them. So it shows Oakley is getting close. Those yellow highlights mean they're getting close to within 25 of their capacity in 25-26 year. W.D. Williams, which we're already addressing, and then there's the Weaverville Primary and Weaverville Elementary, North Buncombe Elementary, North Buncombe Middle School, and Estes. And we know about Estes as well. We had a long-range planning development for them to add additional classrooms. So we use all of this to try to figure out where we're headed and what kind of spacing we're going to need to meet the needs of the student classes. So the next slide shows what has actually happened with our best one of two from 25 versus 24, and we lost 585 students, and this breaks it out by school, and the orange or beige color shows a large loss greater than 20, and then the light blue shows a large gain greater than 20. So we had 2 schools that had a gain of more than 20, and then we had several that had a large loss of greater than 20. And the reason for 20, thinking through classroom space, around 20 average per classroom, knowing that that changes the number of classrooms that's needed. Here is our 14-year ADM, and the key thing about this particular 14 years, the reason I want to show the 14 years is that is when the charter school cap was lifted and changed. And so you can see what has happened here in Buncombe County. And then when COVID hit, we had a large loss, the green bullet. And then from 24 to 25, after Hurricane Helene, we've now seen our second largest loss ever. And that is a depiction of that. The thing that is happening other than our Hurricane Helene is the state trend looks identical to the Buncombe County trend for public schools. This is happening across North Carolina State. And I'm going to dive deep into some ADM trends, enrollment trends across the state. On the left, North Carolina traditional public school ADM since 1993 had grown until about 2013-14 school year, and that's when the charter schools opened up. And you can see that the traditional public school ADM has been decreasing since then as well. On the right shows the North Carolina charter school ADM and what has happened since the same time frame. The next sheet shows you the North Carolina non-public school enrollment, private schools in the grayish color, along with the home schools stacked on top of them, how they have changed over time. And then on the right, it shows all sectors of North Carolina enrollment for students. Traditional public schools still has the largest population, but has continued to decline. And you can see the difference of what's happening. And in North Carolina, the homeschool is outgrowing, and private schools are now outgrowing the charter. Here's another way to look at this. The enrollment change as 0 as your starting point. Traditional schools have gone backwards, and this is the change from 15-16 to 23-24 and what charter schools, private, and homeschools have done. And then on the right is charters in operation from 1997 to 24. And you can see it stayed pretty stable when they first opened charter schools from 1999 through the law changing in 13, and then it has escalated. The one on the right, we are now at 213 charter schools in North Carolina versus the 208. So this is another picture across the United States. I think it's very helpful to see how many charter schools by state. The quantity is on the left, and this was in 24, 25 versus this year. And there's over 53,000 students attending in North Carolina, but you can see it by state, which is interesting to look at to me. And just keep in mind, we're at 213 now versus 208. There was some recent ones approved this year that I'm going to talk about in a minute that's going to impact Buncombe County Schools this coming year. And this is a very quick snapshot that shows since 2015, there's been an overall 8% decrease in enrollment in public school, in traditional public schools. This is a different depiction of the number of private schools and the number of charter schools and homeschools. And you can see what happened with homeschools during COVID. It really increased during that time frame, but most of those have adjusted back down. Those that jumped out came back to some type of, a different type of sector of the school system. The largest alternative market share segment in 2024 in the top left, depicted across the North Carolina. Buncombe was our charter schools, and then you can see how it's different across the state, whether they have charter private mix, they have homeschool, or they have homeschool private and just private alone, if they're the largest alternative market share that's happening across our state. And then the bottom left, the county level LEA market share loss from 15 to 24. For Buncombe County, it was right at 10.3% loss to the market share. So that's a good representation across looking at North Carolina. And then on the right, you will see a change of market share in just a different type of format, and it gives the quantity, the number of students. Here is a key indicator. This is DPI. This is their 5-year projection forecast of what they anticipate and how they're trying to plan budgets around education. On the left, the 24-25 projection is that traditional public schools are going to remain almost flat, some of it, and there's a low, medium, and high analysis that they've done. And so some of it is really, all of it's really close to just remaining very flat to a small decrease or a small increase, depending if you're looking at the low, medium, or high version that DPI did. And then on the right is the forecast for private schools, and this is due to the Opportunity Scholarship and the explosion that the state is predicting will happen to enrollment within that sector. The charts that you're looking at here This shows the projected percent change of students enrolled in public schools, and we're right at 10.3. And this shows you how to look at it across North Carolina. And then the lower, and this is if they use the medium forecast for 5-year projections. And then look at this, in 2930, this is the projected percentage of students enrolled in private schools by then. It will be up close to 30%, and so of our total population moving to a private sector. Next is the projected percent change of students to charter schools in each county. And so it's actually predicting that our charter schools will remain relatively flat to what we're currently seeing right now. So there will be a shift in sectors is what DPI is predicting. Okay. Here is our 25-26 transfers out of Buncombe County schools. We've got it broken down by charters, private, homeschool, city, online, and that is a true online school. Like, well, the majority of them are Penn Foster, and there's K-12 online, and there's a NC Virtual Academy, and I think it's called Acellus, another one. So we have highlighted the highest transfers out in yellow, and you can see that what category they are. Inca High, Inca Middle, Irwin High School, Kuntz, and Robertson High School have had the highest transfers out, but it's broken down here by the type of sector and where they went to. We've also put a key on the right so that you can see what, under charters, the name and where they, what it means. The next slide is the transfers into Buncombe County schools for 25-26. And same type of format, every school, it's got the number of charter school transfers back into us, the private, the homeschool, the city, and the online. This is just a different way of looking at it. In 24-25, our transfer out, we had 113 as the highest, and it went to the private schools, and then 89 to homeschools. That has flip-flopped for the 25-26 school year. We had 90 homeschool transfers out and 83 private, and then online, and so on. So a few of these have flip-flopped between the 2 years. And you may recall last year when I presented this, it was a very unusual year for 24-25. Our normal trend was not normal last year. We had transfer outs happening at 5th, 6th, and 9th grade, and 10th grade and 11th grade, which I think had a lot to do with Hurricane Helene versus our normal year. And then in 25-26, it has returned to almost our exact history, that during 5th and 6th grades, they transfer out. Usually when there's a transition to a different school is when we're seeing that happen. And here is a breakdown of the student transfer destination by grade level. So homeschool in the top left shows when they're leaving us to go to homeschool by grade. Charter school, when they decide to leave. Private school, Asheville City Schools, and the online. And that's the majority, that is the breakdown of, by grade level, the type, the sector that they decided to transfer out. I've included this just for facts that you all could click on and choose to read later if you want to. The House Bill 219 was the charter school omnibus, and then the House Bill 618. Both of those were passed in August of 23. That impacted another level of the charter schools being able to start virtual academies and start other, and increase their population. Next, I want to talk about the voucher information. You may recall, we were talking about this last year. They approved a $625 million appropriation fiscal year 25-26 in the previous state budget that was passed. The recent news is forecasting that that is not going to be enough to cover the amount of applications that are being received. And I'm going to get into the dates in a minute of when they make 2 payments a year, one in the fall and one in the spring, and you have to have your application in by March 1st. And so the latest news said that the number of applications that have been received and are eligible for a voucher, the $625 million won't be able to cover them all. So there is, built in through year 2030, there is progression and millions more being contributed. So we're going to talk about that in just a minute with more depth. I have put links on here for enrollment periods and how it works. But this is vital right here. North Carolina's voucher program is the most unregulated in the nation. In 2021, Duke did a study and found that North Carolina's voucher program was the only one in the nation that lacks regulation in 5 of these areas: accreditation or state approval of the private voucher schools, regulation of voucher school curriculum, requiring teachers in the voucher schools to be certified, requiring administration of state tests to voucher students, establishing minimum student instruction time in the voucher schools. So as a result, many voucher students attend small fly-by-the-night private schools rather than the exclusive, well-resourced academies that most folks envision when they think of private schools. Here is an updated chart of increase in voucher tuition from 23-24 to 24-25. Wake was number 1, and Mecklenburg next, and then there were 2 that fall in the next category, Forsyth and Guilford. And then there's 9 counties that are experiencing, and we fall in this, that are experiencing between 5.1 million and 10.4 million going out to charter or to voucher tuition payments. And then there's the breakdown of the rest of the schools across the state and how much is being paid with students in those counties that are going to private schools and getting tuition payments. And take a look, Buncombe County's number 9. It has gone from 939 to 1942 in this time period of looking at it at February of 25. And that number has actually grown even more since that time period to February of 26. And on the right-hand side shows the grade level that those tuition payments were made for. And then the next chart is the NC voucher payments from 2014 to 15, and 1.4 billion has been pushed into the voucher payments from state funds. And just to clarify that in this left-hand side where it says the ESA Plus vouchers, those have been in place. Those are for children with disabilities that can acquire a voucher. This is different from the other voucher payments that have been, but it's included in total on this chart, so I want to disclaim that. And you can see the breakdown on the right, how much was ESA Plus payments, and then how much is actually gone to what's called the Opportunity Scholarship payment. So it gives a cumulative amount of all of them added together on the right-hand side. And so this is all coming directly from the North Carolina State Education Assistance Authority, and they're the one that oversees the voucher system and pays out payments and accepts the applications and determines the payments. And this is basically saying the same thing, that the funds are continuing to increase. And the original establishment of this was for low-income students currently enrolled in public schools to attend participating private schools, but the whole purpose has changed. And so now there's a increase of the amount of tuition that can be paid out each year that has gone from the original amount of $4,200 up to over $7,000 per student, and the guidelines for the income has been lifted. Here's the payment schedule of how it works. Schools receive those scholarship funds twice per year, fall and spring semester. Late August is the certification time frame when schools tell and we copied this straight off of the North Carolina State Education Assistance Authority. So that agency is the one that takes and certifies the students. And then in August and September, the endorsements and payments to the schools are made. And then it's done again in the spring. And by March 1st, you have to have your application in for the spring one to count. And the payment schedule can be broken up if you request it in single term awards, so that you can get the fall paid for, or you could get the spring paid for if needed, depending on, as a student, where you want to go and what your plans are. But there's the deadlines: no later than October 1st for fall and March 1st for the spring funding. And then here's a nice little chart that breaks down. The bottom shows how much funding has been put into it based on legislation, and the top one shows the amount that was the maximum income limit of a family of 4. That's a chart up there showing a family of 4 by year. And then in 24-25, that's when they no longer required you to be required to be enrolled in a prior public school. There's no longer a max on the income, and there's a max voucher tuition paid out now up to $7,400, and then the number of vouchers in 24-25 that was paid out on was 80,274, which now has drastically increased in 25-26. And this chart is very eye-opening to me. These are the different tiers based on income and the quantity that are applying. Tier 1 up to that $59,478, there was $11,842, and then you can see Tier 2 up to $118,000 of income, $11,212, and this is a family of 4 as well. Tier 3 up to $267,000 of annual income, $10,401 applied. And Tier 4, no limit on your income, $6,633 applied. Very eye-opening. The next one is available funds for opportunity scholarships by year, showing all the way to 2033-34. It's built in to have $855 million, and this is the chart directly out of showing you the number in your household, the award tier based on the maximum income, and broken down by all 4 tiers, up to 12 in your household. This is just for you all to choose to read if you want to later on. I've given you the fiscal impact for Senate Bill 406 and House 823, and depends on the percentage of new opportunity scholarships who previously attended public schools, but the eligibility expansion makes this percentage difficult to predict with certainty now. And it directs that at least 50% of the new scholarship funds must go to students who qualify for free and reduced price lunch. And that no longer is the case with the new funding. And so in 25-26, as of February 2nd, 2026, Buncombe County had 2,269, and this could be Asheville City and us because they lump it all together on here. 2,269 students, and total dispersed for Buncombe County is right at $12 million as of February 26th. That number in the right-hand side is now, we're up to 105,000 in the state that have been dispersed tuition payments. And on the horizon are more virtual charter schools. So these are the three that we've been paying over the years, and they take a portion of our local funds. Each month we have to pay based on the number of students attending. And this is 11-year span of those particular schools. Now, I've provided, I'm gonna go through these fast, and I've provided every new charter school that was approved for 25-26 and what county they're in. But some of these could become virtual schools because the one, let me go back. The Pine Springs Preparatory Academy is actually in Wake County, and we have several students attending there. So we are paying for those from our local funds. These are the list that, or this is the list of new charter schools for 26-27 that have been approved. Here's what's key. Art Space Charter is in the planning period but was approved to become a remote virtual school and can open in 26-27. And then Franklin School of Innovation was approved in February of 26 to open in 26-27. And that is grades 9 through 12. So I have put that all together so that we could keep our minds on enrollment and the trends that are happening in all of the different sectors and what it means for Buncombe County schools and trying to figure out a budget around that. So I'm going to turn it over to Clark, who's going, go ahead.
Do you mind just a couple questions?
Yeah, I don't mind at all.
If there's any from the board. I had just a couple of quick questions. So the membership projection, we're using the did you say we're using the 6-year average now?
We're using the 10-year in this
The
chart.
10-year. You said something was being skewed by the 10-year.
It is. So let me explain that a little better. If you look back over 10 years, the percentage of change is not as great of a negative as we have had in the last 6 years from 2020. So that little 4 years of where we didn't really have a big drop off is still making it look like we're not decreasing at the rate we are based on how this methodology is produced. I am going to switch this next year and look at the 6-year versus, because it would give you a more accurate of what is actually happening with the ADM trend.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, thank you. I know, I was just curious, like I was thinking through, is it correct to say like on the membership projections versus capacity page? Cane Creek caught my eye for whatever reason. So you've got projected numbers in those columns at the top. So you have current, which is actual, and then you have projected for next year through 2030, 31. Like Cane Creek goes down in those projections for the next 3 years, but it looked like to me, what I thought is it correct to say that I should be looking at the cohort survival percentage or something for?
Yes, and you don't.
For Fairview and Glen Arden to some degree?
Oh, no, wait,
To
it's
see
done.
if Cane Creek should be going up or down?
Okay, no, it's done per school. I have a sheet built out for every single school based on this example of Fairview.
Yeah.
That feeds into this other sheet.
Yeah,
So I have actual Cane Creek numbers all the way back, and then it does its cohort progression.
Okay.
Survival rate,
so we
sorry.
could, if we have some specific interest, we could ask you for that later.
Yes, I can provide all of those.
Okay. Sorry, I had another couple of quick questions. Something caught my eye in here. A lot of great information, thank you.
Thank you.
Is it correct to say, that, so first, on, this data, the transfers out and transfers in, it would be really interesting, I think, and helpful if maybe, if we could combine those to see the net change.
Okay? That's good feedback.
Yeah, because the first page is obviously very alarming.
But
And then you look at
then-
the next page and you say, oh, wait a minute.
Part of them's coming back.
Bell Elementary gained, and there's a lot of, I was trying to do some quick math and just see who was gaining, but, based off of in and out, but,
Yes, I can do a summary sheet
that would be,
later.
yeah, another column. And so, and is it correct to say that student transfers out to other destinations have decreased year over year? From the 2024 to 2025 school year to the 2025, 2026 school year, just looking, using my eyes, kind of, the totals aren't on here, but it looks like it's a decrease. Like
Which years are you saying have decreased?
this, between 2024 and 2025, so last school year and then this current school year, is there a total, is that adding up to a total decrease of transfers out?
I do not believe so. I'll have to get you this sheet. I would have to add them up. I've got another sheet that totals them, because we had a larger decrease let me say it this way. We had a very large decrease that left us in 24-25. That was the 585 that left. We're not seeing that same decrease. I think that part will be true. Coming in 26-27, we will have less of a transfer out than what we saw during the hurricane year.
Yeah, it looks like we might be on a better trajectory is all I'm trying to gauge.
We're hoping that
It
we
looks
will.
like we kind of are.
We're hoping that we will plateau.
There's just kind of less transferred out. And then I
Yes.
also noticed that on the grade level transfers, I typically just sense from the community that a lot of times in the 5th grade, parents start to look, right? Because middle school can be challenging. It's, maybe they want a smaller setting or something, but those numbers dramatically decreased for the transfer out for the 6th grade.
Yes.
Which I think is great news. And I can tell, like, administration's been doing a lot of work in middle schools. It just seems to kind of add up.
I agree with you on that. Yes, that is.
I think maybe that was it. I just want to confirm I was thinking about that. And I know the other question. This voucher information page where you have you show us listed in that 4th place there. Is that 5 million to 10.4? So is that saying each one of those schools, each one of those 9 schools, each one of those 9 counties has somewhere between $5 and $10 million
Being
leaving? Okay, each. Got it.
Yes.
All right. Thanks. I think I'm good. Thank you. Anyone else? Sorry. Yes. Amy.
Hey, Tina.
Hey, Emma.
Quick question. So, and I feel like I knew this, but may have forgotten it. For vouchers, when a student uses a voucher and goes to a private school, and let's say that within a month's time or whatever, it's not a good fit and they come back to us. I know, like with charter school monies, the money doesn't come back, but is the state refunded at all for that voucher that was given to that private school? Or is once it's spent, it's gone?
Once it's spent, it's gone. And
Okay.
if they have not come to us within that 40-day window, best one of two, 20 and 20. If they have not come to us by day 40, and then they come after that, we do not get any funding for them. And it has gone to wherever they resided during that time frame, because they true up all of our best 1 of 2 numbers, including the charters and the private schools, based on that.
And when you say residing, I guess residing as a student though, right? So essentially that private school, which for whatever reason really turned out to not serve them or serve their needs.
Correct.
So I guess the way that I could see this, if I really wanted to, go down that rabbit hole, is you could get a lot of fly-by-night private schools who, have flashy bells and whistles, get students in, only to then, after those, 40 days, either shutter, which is maybe more dramatic, or just, for whatever reason, decide that that student is not a good fit. Because again, and this has been my argument with vouchers, is private schools at any time can decide that they're not going to educate a student. They don't have to give a reason. So I just think of that as, again, being a fiscal conservative, this is always something that has bothered me, because we are handing over blank checks to, unregulated private schools. And I know that I'm speaking to the choir on this, but I think that's real important information to get out there too. But I just wanted to be sure that I was still on track with the understanding that that money was pretty much gone after that time period.
That is true.
Okay.
It's based on per semester, and there's not a recall for it if that student moves. There's no tracking if that student moves.
Right. Well, I think that's a very good question, and I would hope that parents start asking where their taxpayer dollars are going when that happens. Thanks.
So when we look at the grade level transfer, have we did a study to see why most of our kids are exiting the Buncombe County school system from 5th grade to 11th grade? Do we understand the pattern why? Because I know 5th and 6th grade will be a shocker when it comes down to intermediate schools. But have we find out why we have so much a great transition between that? Is it sports? Is it academics? Is it certain things other schools are offering that we don't offer?
Can I turn that over to Dr. Jackson?
With a smile, I saw. Thank you for the question. I don't believe it's athletics. Most schools don't offer the athletic programs that our public schools do. I don't think it's academics if we're actually looking at academic results, particularly across students. However, to Chairman Elliott's point a little earlier, middle school, particularly as we begin to exit elementary grades, or when parents begin to look for opportunities outside of our public schools, and to, again, to his earlier point, we have been looking at that and working really hard with our intermediate and middle schools to ensure we're doing a great job recruiting our own students, because others are desperately trying to recruit our students from our public schools, to the point that I've shared with you each of our principals sends a letter, a note, or a brochure to every charter school student in their attendance zone, inviting them in for a tour. One of our principals, Mr. Wheelis at Irwin High School, sent a handwritten note to over 100 children who would live in the Irwin High School district, and was very grateful last week to hear the story of their curriculum night of 2 families who've enrolled in the school as a result of that intentional invitation. Specifically to your question, we do try our best to get information from families when they make the choice to withdraw. We don't always get that information from the families.
Because I'm looking at this because it's a continuation of a pattern that's going on for the past 2 years. Because when I look at, I'm in TC's district, so we had 2 kids leave that school for baseball because they went to Asheville, the one on Smoker Brook Highway. We had a bunch of kids leave for soccer because they went to Carolina Day on Hendersonville Highway. And I always get this other school that's behind me, the all-male school. Kids left there for lacrosse and soccer. So I'm trying to see if we can find whatever that catch is out of this 46, 65, 43, 44, 41, 35, 42, what is it that is challenging our parents to leave us, then I think we can put together a better proactive approach to keep them inside of our schools. Because when you have a bunch of charters around you, kids have more options. And this is what I'm looking at with these transfers. You look at, especially when you get over here with the vouchers, when you're looking at counties, the more schools that are suffering are the schools that have more around them. They have more opportunity to go to another school system other than us. So I think it's worth investigating.
I think any other questions or?
No, this is just a comment, and I totally understand the reason why, but you know, I love athletics. In sixth grade, we don't offer athletics at the middle school level, and I understand why it's a transportation issue, but if you look, sixth grade is the one that is the highest. Now, the great news is, and I think this is really great news, is ninth grade, where, you know, I've heard about, you know, so much of people talking about transferring their kids in the ninth grade. We went down almost double, went from 80 students to 41. That's a great news story, in my opinion. I don't want to lose 41, but from 80 to 41, that does tell me that high schools are doing, I think, a good job of the open houses. The thing at Irwin was a fabulous event, and in talking to parents that were eighth grade parents having students going into the ninth grade, the fact that we could show them, having teachers there to show them, what do they learn in science? What are they doing in CTE? What are they doing? I mean, that excited people, especially the students. And so maybe every high school's doing that, but I do think we're doing a good job of at the ninth grade level of having kids excited about our high schools, which is a good news story. But I just throw that out there about the sixth grade. It may not be, but it would be interesting to know the reason.
I have one last question. Do you know, sorry, Amy, go ahead.
Just one quick anecdotal comment on the sixth grade for Robertson, just because I've lived in that area, been a part of that area, and my daughter went through the whole octopus known as Glenarden and Cane Creek and Kuntz. But I do know that for a lot of parents in that particular scenario, the hopping around of all of the different schools, there's really not that stability. So you had the kids that are going from K4 to Glenarden, 5, 6 to Kuntz, and then the other, at that point, for 7th, 8th, they split off and go to, some of them, you know, at Kuntz go to Valley Springs, while the Glenarden kids joined 7th grade at Cane Creek, which is a 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then they form bonds there. And then there's that split at Cane Creek to Robertson and Reynolds, and then you now are entering the 9th grade at Robertson with, you know, again, being kind of the underdog, so to speak, and from what families have told me, and honestly what I experienced as a parent, from everything from sports to the arts, and you know, just the friendships. And this is something I've talked about. Actually, it's a very strong reason as to why I ran for the board. But I've often said that is something, you know, it's very unique to Glenarden, and I'd like to, at some point in the future, look to see how we can make that better. I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of intermediate schools, but they're here. We put a lot of money and time and effort into them, so they're not going anywhere. But I think we really do have to look at making sure that we're servicing all of our students in Buncombe County to the best of their ability in that particular grade setup. So that was my opportunity to get that out again.
Well, and we have that with all the other
Yeah.
intermediate schools, that we have fifth and sixth grade, and they all go to a middle school. So, my 5 elementary go to Evelyn, and then they go.
They just all go together, though.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. Yeah.
Sorry. See, I get passionate, I start moving those hands. But yeah, that's the difference, though, is that they stay together, which is what happens for Avery's Creek and Estes. It does not happen for Glenarden. And so when people are looking to buy houses that are families, again, anecdotally, but been there, lived there for a while, they start to see that big split. And there is question as to, do I want to put my kid into that scenario, or do I want to try to move into the Avery's Creek or the Estes? Biltmore Park starts to look really inviting in that situation. So, thank you. End of rant.
Thank you. One last, I understood there was a change in the approval process for new charter schools that used to go through the Charter School Advisory Board or something, and that a year or two ago, that process was changed. Do you know, I can't remember, it somehow, it seemed like it was maybe less rigorous.
It is. It changed last year.
Do you know?
And it doesn't have to go through that advisory committee, and it goes straight, and they can, the state approves. It changed, and it's much easier to have them approve a virtual or approve a charter school.
So it's, okay, that's what I thought. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to turn it over to Clark, but the appendix we will not cover, but it has a lot of valuable information in there that you can view at your leisure.
Thank you, Tina.
Figure out how to work this technology. All right, there we go. Good afternoon, Chairman Elliott, Dr. Jackson, members of the board. Thank you for joining us, and I'm going to give you a really high-level look at the process of long-range planning, and then in our next presentation, you will see the results of this year's planning process and the projects that will be brought to you for approval. So maintenance and facilities long-range planning, it's basically the strategic alignment of enrollment, funding, capital projects that ensures that our capital investment supports our instructional goals, enhance student safety, and maintain long-term fiscal responsibility. So in the maintenance and facilities department, we deal with different levels. We have the day-to-day urgent responses that it can be anything from a HVAC failure to a roof leak to all of the work orders that come through our office, whether they're emergency in nature or a standard work request. We deal with long-range planning is what we're talking about today, and in all of those processes, we use stakeholder input to develop the best results for each of those. It could be internal departmental work, which happens every day. We use external groups, community advisor groups, and also external contractors to help us with our decision-making process. Some of the key planning drivers for us are the enrollment trends that Ms. Thorpe just discussed with you. We look at those all the time. We also have hired an outside source this year, ORED, to look at our capacity studies across the system. So that's one example of using, external contracted sources to help us in our decision-making processes. We also have to look at our funding sources so we can synchronize our projects with the available sources. Our needs will always outweigh our funding. And then the big part from our office, the facilities and maintenance department, is looking at our conditions of our buildings and our capacity using the data that we have and we continually are watching that as far as the capacity and the condition of our facilities. When it comes down to looking at everything in front of us, we use the prioritization established by this board. It's Board Policy 9030 that talks about the different priorities for facility construction and maintenance. So these items, safety, health, and regulatory compliance, space modernization and additions where needed, or our assets and our infrastructure needs, roofs, HVAC, building envelopes, et cetera, are how we prioritize our budget that we will present to you. So again, we use our internal stakeholders. It starts out with our principals, our teachers, central office staff, our own maintenance and facility staff, security staff at schools that present to us what they feel like are needs. Each group, and this is how we start this involves the entire capital process that, again, we'll talk about deeper in the next presentation. Our external stakeholders, we have PTA groups, community groups, industry professionals, which would be architects, engineers. We even deal with our county officials, gaining, like Ms. Thorpe showed earlier, the permitting, permits that were pulled in the county for the year, and just evaluate all that information to come up with our long-range plan. This is an example of one of the exterior or contractors that we used back in early, I think it was 2017 actually, when the audit was completed on our security audit that resulted in our lobby projects that we are currently working on. Not only that, there was a other list of items that we're continuing to work on as far as the safety window film on our exterior glass. That's about 80% completed, and hopefully by the end of the summer, that number will be 100% completed with the funds we have that we've been working on in a fashion to get all the schools done as quickly as possible. And the lobby upfits, we lack 28 schools to have all of our vestibules in place, and I think each of you have experienced that process at one of our schools. I wanted to show you some examples. You may hear the term advanced planning study or a schematic design. So if you look at the image on the left, this was the schematic design advanced planning study results for W.D. Williams. And if you notice in the bottom left corner, you can see there was an option for 8 classrooms, and then you see the blue and yellow colors showing 4, then you see the red media center. The drawing on the right these are the actual drawings for W.D. Williams. So it started out in a conceptual manner on the left, and then with all of the stakeholder input, the design teams, the contractors, our staff, this is the final result on the right. So I just wanted to kind of show you that process, and that takes years for all that to come into place, but showing you how after ORED completes their capacity study that y'all will hear next week, there may be needs for additional advanced planning studies at some of our schools, depending on the results of that study. The next slide is going to show you Glenarden. So this is a portion of the advanced planning study at Glenarden. So this is just showing conceptual designs of what it would look like, one example of what it would look like if we replace the building at Glenarden. This is obviously very conceptual in nature, and at some point when the funding is available, this will move into a full set of drawings like you could see there on the previous slide at W.D. Williams. Some other advanced planning projects that we've done are for North Buncombe Middle, that you can see on the list that are looking at capacity issues. We also have some that are not listed on here for North Buncombe Elementary, have some for Weaverville Primary. We've done Irwin High and Inca High, some advanced planning studies. So we have several advanced planning studies already complete that hopefully will align with our capacity study results, and we will be ahead of the game when that time comes. So that is the end of that presentation. Again, we will go deep into the projects here in a few minutes. You have any questions so far?
Any questions for Mr. Wyatt?
All right, thank you. Turn it back over to Ms. Thorne.
So we're going to move to the proposed capital outlay budget. You have a manual in front of you that has the projects and the budget in it. And I also want to recognize that two of the principals that was on the committee came to attend in case there were questions. Dr. Bellato and Mr. Fisher are here. The other two could not make it but wish they could. That was Ms. Rookie and Mr. Honeycutt. So this is the proposed budget book that has all of the requests in it. So let's begin by the whole process so that everybody knows how we go about it. And I want to give a special thanks to the team. Dr. Bellato, Mr. Honeycutt, Mr. Fisher, Don Rookie, Clark White, Ron Griffin, Beth Anderson, Sam Interlicia, Robert Frisbee, and the finance team. We are the ones, the finance team's the one who oversees just keeping up with it and sending all of the the Google Sheets out to the principals, and then tracking everything and keeping up with the request from the finance side. So the overview of the process is we identify our needs through sending it out. We send Google Sheets out to stakeholders. Those are principals and directors, superintendents. Everybody has sheets that they are to identify any capital needs that they need. Sometimes they do put stuff on there that's not capital, and we get back with them and say, this is a work order, go ahead and put that in. And so we identify the needs. In there, we let the principals and directors do their ranking and decide what is their top priority, and they list it like S-1 or S-2 and so on. They are not to duplicate, so that as the committee has the ability to understand their ranking. And then finance compiles all of these requests into a manual that we use when we start actually meeting. And once we get all of it back and turn the dates off for the principals, the expediters, which are all of the maintenance teams and the technology and other stakeholders, put the costing together for every project. They understand what the project was meant to be, what the purpose was, make sure they understand what the principal requested, and then figure out the cost associated with doing that project. So we load the cost in, and then we have our committee meetings. Those committee meetings, we rotate each year to make sure that we have a representative from each of the districts, and we rotate through, so we don't, one year one district will be off and then they come back on the next year. And then also to make sure we have the different grade levels representatives on this committee. And then we bring that recommended budget to you all, and then we go for adoption next Thursday. We also now use this to identify all capital projects. So we take these lists, we brought the list to our principals and this board, or this committee, that was determining what was going to long-term to Article 39, what was going to go to lottery. And so those requests are in here as well. We're going to identify with you the 4042 budget request. We're going to ask and show you the Article 39 request, and then we're going to show you the lottery request for 26, 27. And then the budget approval process, and then we begin. If all approved here, then it goes to the county commissioners, and they would approve on June 2nd this year, and then funds become available July 1. So I basically just summarized all of the dates for you. On this sheet, it tells you specifically for this year when things went out, what the due dates were, when our capital meetings were, and the appeals, and then the voting. And there's a 7-member team that votes on anything that came down to a vote. In a, oh, the PowerPoint is not, it's not a printout. It's on the drive that you're looking at. And then the book shows every project. Okay, sorry. The Capital Outlay Committee meetings, I've described this, the committee evaluates each project multiple times. Each of the directors and principals go through it, and it takes around usually 3 to 4 times before we get through every single project in this book before the committee makes the final decision and to stay within the budget that we're provided from the county. And then, as Clark said earlier, needs will always outdistance our funding. So we try to use this as the mechanism to make sure that the priorities are met following Board Policy 9030 and following the principal or director that put in the request. And here's the different funding sources once again, so you can see there's Article 40 and Article 42, sales tax, Article 39, and then the lottery funds that come in based on the amount of lottery tickets that are sold in Buncombe County, plus there is a small portion that's sold across North Carolina State that comes into the amount that Buncombe County gets, and that is split between Buncombe County schools and Asheville City schools. And then the type of debt bonds that are available if we choose to use any of those. And most of the Article 39, depending on what type of project, goes out for a bond, a LOBS, a limited obligation, and most of those are for 20 years bonds, and that our Article 39 sales tax pays the debt issuance on that. And Ms. Kim Clemens is on that committee for us. This is just a slide showing you the different sources, and the Article 4042 is the most flexible. It is given to us monthly from the county. Article 39 is submitted based on project request and amount spent, and we request the funds back each month, 2 times a month usually. There's a few months we only request 1 time depending on our calendar. And so those funds come in after we've paid for the project and request the funds back. And then lottery must go through an approval process for us here, and then the county has to approve, and then we have to send it to DPI for approval. And the funds all of these funds sit at the county level and then are dispersed to us as appropriately. I've already described this in the first round of our principals and directors, which I think is very important. They put the immediate needs list together, and then they also put a future consideration list together that helps us go out 5 years or 10 years looking at what's coming that needs to be addressed through capital needs. And then we have them break this down so that we know, besides the school request or director request, maintenance has their own list of all the different categories of things that they are keeping up with, which is roofs, HVACs, floors, you name it. That is at a county level, and they have prioritized these across the entire county based on their expertise and from feedback from the stakeholders. And then the facility personnel handle the roofing, the structural issues, and that is Beth and Sam Interlicia that help guide those lists, as well as Mr. Clark Wyatt. And then technology, Mr. Robert Frisbee and his team help us identify and predict our technology needs, and this is We have a very strong technology infrastructure that is set up in Buncombe County Schools with the one-to-one devices, security cameras. The networking system that we have is massive, and the number of devices that we support. And also, he oversees the MTAC committee and their priority list, so that gets filtered into the capital request list from the MTAC as well. This year, the projection for the Article 4042 sales tax, these always come from the county, and it's based on the amount of sales tax that they're receiving for the Article 40 and 42. And so this year's revenue source is predicted to have $18,608,750 that comes to us, and that's what we based our capital projects on. Keep in mind, this is always subject to change because it is based on sales tax collected. The 26-27 budget cost of request, there were 333 million of requests in this book. And in 25-26, it was 323 million of requests. So each year the requests go up. And it's been that way since I've been here. Here is a breakdown of our request and the amount that was approved by our committee. This is the breakdown of the ones that were approved based on the type of project that was brought to you all for approval. And so keep in mind, all of this ties back, the technology piece ties back to the student one-to-one devices, over 3 million in there, and then there's a breakdown sheet back there at Countywide Technology that you can see what makes up that, which goes right back into the school systems, each school. And there's some presentation boards in there this year as well, more than what we've put in the past. So those are directly going to the schools for the teachers and the students. So all of these do. We just break it out so that we can keep track of it. This is the graph for the last 10 years, and you can see on the top is the dollar amount of request, and the little purple beside of it is what we were able to fund. Out of the 333 million, we're able to fund 18.6 million. And then on the bottom, it shows the number of quantity of requests and how many were funded. So out of a little over 1,100 projects requested, the amount that was able to fund is close to 200 of those, a little under 200. And I'm going to turn it over to Clark, and he's going to finish up this presentation around the different projects.
I think each of us has seen the slide before, but it always is important to bring this up, the size of Buncombe County and how much it takes to maintain this system. So we're obviously the 15th largest system in the state. We have 44 campus sites, over 1,300 acres of property, 13 million square feet of roads. That's over 300 acres of parking lots. It's a lot. We have over 5.6 million square feet of conditioned space and around 4.5 million square feet of roofs. The red in that map represents the city of Asheville district, and then you can see the other 6 county districts surrounding the center of the county. So this is an updated life cycle cost of our system. And this is, I want to bring to attention, this is just talking about our facilities and maintenance infrastructure. This does not cover any technology cost. Their infrastructure is obviously maintained and monitored by the technology department, but their number is very close to this number as far as what the annual spending requirement is to maintain this size of a district. So you can pick any infrastructure component on the left column where it says building component, and It's just a simple math project. It's a quantity of whatever that component is, what its life expectancy is, what the average replacement cost is, and how much we have to spend on an annual basis to maintain what we have today. You know, who would have guessed we have 9,000 doors in Buncombe County schools? Doors get open and closed a lot, and the locks get used a lot. So to keep those, if we say the doors in our buildings are going to last 40 years, then we must spend $675,000 each year on doors to keep up. It's a very simple math project. This shows some identified needs that we were not able to fund this year. So roofing, for example, unbudgeted immediate needs. So there were basically $11 million worth of roofing needs that were not able to be funded. And then even if you throw in the future considerations, throws in a little over $8 million, which totals over $19 million worth of roofs that are in the need of repair either now or in the near future. Same thing with electrical and flooring. You can see how we're not spending, we don't have enough money to meet our needs, and that's what this slide is showing. So if you go to electrical, we're running $3.5 million behind, and flooring almost $10 million behind. So we're going to get into our Article 39 request and long-range planning. And our request this year, we had 40 immediate needs requests that were presented to the county that totaled, as a phased approach, about $54 million. So our number one request from this was to finish W.D. Williams. W.D. Williams, we started it. It's, you know, obviously Helene came through it the latest little bit. The construction project is moving really nicely. And due to the fact that it's needing all the funding right now to complete W.D. Williams, the County School Capital Fund Commission, we worked hard together with the county staff and the commission to come up with 3 options, 3 plans to make sure that we could get the funding we need to complete W.D. Williams. So option 1, this is what you see in front of you is what will be voted on I think it's June 2nd when the county commissioners meet. So June 2nd, the School Capital Fund Commission has approved these plans, and they will be officially approved at the June 2nd county commissioner meeting. So following that meeting, upon approval, we will receive a full $28 million to be working on W.D. Williams. That will be, those funds will come available July 1. And then below that, you will see the different Asheville City Schools projects that were approved. What you will see as a board, after this is approved on June 2nd, we will bring to you at our June board meeting a addendum to the current contract to keep working on the W.D. Williams project for our CMAR contractor, Hickory Construction. So we'll see a smaller addendum on or amendment on the 1st of January or 1st of June, and then we'll bring the remaining CMAR cost at the end of June to complete that work that will take about 18 more months to finish the work inside. With these, obviously $28 million is a big hit to the Article 39. So what the committee came up with were 3 options. You just saw option 1. Option 2 is, we've all heard about the bond referendum, and part of the bond referendum is funding W.D. Williams. So option number 2 shows you what projects will be passed or will be funded in the month of November following the bond referendum and the results based on the election. So following the election in November, if the referendum passes, these 10 projects will be, the funding will be available for them to start beginning November, December, and if it passes, the entire $28 million for W.D. Williams will be paid for with bond proceeds. So that money will be paid back to the Article 39 budget, which will allow these projects to be funded. The next option you see is option 3, and this is if the referendum fails. So if the referendum fails, then, and we all hope it's not going to fail, we hope it's going to pass, but if it does fail, then we will, the W.D. Williams portion, the $28 million, will be sent to a LOBS, as Ms. Thorpe talked about earlier. It will be put into a LOBS that will be refunded through the Article 39 process at a rate of around $2 million a year. So it will be immediately debt financed into a LOBS bond, and then this money will be freed up to complete these projects. The one additional project you see on this list that you didn't see on option 2 was Glen Arden Elementary. So the $6 million there would be to do some major renovations to Glen Arden if the referendum fails. If it passes, part of the bond will be to build a brand new Glen Arden Elementary. So that's, we hope that all that works out. And I've just covered a ton of stuff that's confusing. If there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them. I'll show you some of the projects, the process or progress
Clark,
at
I
W.
do have
Williams.
that have not, that don't have that at this point.
Correct.
That's huge, because that would impact in a much, I think, a very positive way for all of our districts, because every district has schools that don't have the security system.
It'll make every school equal.
It make every school the same. And I will tell you, at the Irwin event last week, I did have, a few parents talk about they loved having that extra security when they enter Irwin High School. So I think parents they appreciate that, and I want to add that because I think it's important for people to know.
Thank you. So I just want to give you a few quick update slides. This is not exactly current, but they are setting steel at W.D. Williams, and the classroom portion actually has a roof on it now, and the construction's moving along nicely. This addition will be ready for the next school year, which is the media center and 4 classrooms, and then the work that we're going to bring to you to ask for approval over the summer will create additional classroom space in the current media center that will allow for the swing space as we move through the building and renovate each wing of the building, and that's roughly an 18 to 20 month project to finish. So a lot going on at W.D. Williams. If you drive out, it's a busy place. This is one of the projects that in November will be funded, is the completion of the Valley Springs Middle School athletic field renovations. I think each of y'all have seen that. Another portion of the funding will be roughly $3 million will be provided to the technology department to work on their network infrastructure upgrades. And this is for their switch gears, their servers, their batteries, security cameras, all the things that keep us safe through all the crazy stuff going on out there with the internet. And this is a slide that shows part of that work. You can see on the left is old equipment with the old wiring, and you can see on the right how things are getting smaller but more powerful. Your cell phone you carry in your hand now has more power than the computers you had 5 years ago. But that's just an example of some of the work that's taken place. Another project that will be funded through the Article 39 process is the fire alarm replacement at North Buncombe High. Each of you have seen the high priority security upfits. As I mentioned earlier, at the end of the summer, we should have our window film completed on all of our buildings. We're also hoping that, with the bond passing, that we will have our visitor vetting at the rest of the 28 buildings, and then still working on different access control pieces and perimeter security across the county. 2 playgrounds are part of the Article 39 funding. One at Estes, which you can see there is in desperate need of repair, and the other one is Emma Elementary, which will be funded in November, and we will get to work on those as soon as we get the funds become available. Roofing, again, showing we have over 4.5 million square feet of roofing. This list of schools is where we will be doing additional roofing with the Article 39 funds as they are approved. So quite a few number of schools and a lot of square footages will be repaired. And now we're going to talk about how we're planning on using our lottery funds this year. So our lottery funds, we have decided this year to use them for paving. It's easy, it's a nice, clean way to use lottery funds, and $2.5 million of our lottery funding will be going to these following schools. So we'll be paving at Owen Middle, North Buncombe Elementary, Valley Springs, West Buncombe, and Irwin Middle. So those are the schools that we will get this funding upon y'all's approval and begin that work as early as possible this summer. And the bond request. So as Ms. Clemens talked about earlier, the bond this year, or that we hope that gets on the agenda or on the election in November, and if it passes, our goal is to complete the 28 remaining schools that need the lobby security upfits to make all of our schools equal with the lobbies. Glen Arden, as each of you know, Glen Arden's in desperate need of replacement. That's a $45 million project that, upon passing of the bond, we will begin working on that as soon as possible, hopefully early December. And then obviously W.D. Williams is going to be funded temporarily through the Article 39 process, and hopefully upon passing of the bond, that will be repaid by the 39 funds will be repaid by the bond proceeds, but we are moving on with W.D. Williams right now, so we will be ready for Glen Arden when the time comes. And you want to talk about the community? Ms. Thorpe wants to talk about the school community funding.
The school community impact funds is a small amount of additional funding that the county commissioners approved to give to us to work on capital items that are considered community impact, and a lot of times it's playgrounds. So I'm going to give you some history of some nice screenshots of things that we worked on with those funds. And here's the actual list that the county has of the playgrounds that we've worked on. So it's Cane Creek, Hall Creek, Woodfin, Black Mountain Elementary, Barnardsville, and Avery's Creek. We have used braided funding in order to make these happen, in addition to the amount funded through this school community impact funding source. Here's some past projects. This was Barnardsville before. This is Barnardsville now. And then some future projects that we're headed into is Avery's Creek. It's in desperate need of repair as well. Besides the two that we're doing in Article 39, we're going to do Avery's Creek with this funding source. And we also have some 4042 funds that will help with Avery's Creek. That's in this process of getting these playgrounds updated as well. Do you have any questions?
Just a clarifying comment on the bond referendum. It has not been voted on by the county commissioners, so I want people to know that we're looking at, or they're looking at, the appetite of our voters to determine whether or not they will vote to put that bond referendum on the November ballot. And I think it's important for people to know that. I'm very, very hopeful, and we have a wonderful county commissioner, Terry Wells, kind of leading the charge on that, but that has not been voted on. So I don't want voters to go, you know, we didn't know this was coming too. I know there's been a lot of things in the news lately.
Thank you. Ms. Churchill?
Do we have a cheat sheet for what all the priority numbers and codes stand for? I can remember a few of them, but not all of them.
Okay.
Like there's a
Typically, and
PG
I
a S.
apologize, typically, I had put those in the front of that manual, and I totally forgot.
Okay.
The little cheat sheet. But I can get you a copy of that, and I apologize, because I used to always put those in the front, and it slipped my brain this year.
It's all good. I'm just proud that I actually could figure out a couple of them from memory.
Are there any questions you have that we can
Yeah.
help you with,
Okay.
of a number or a letter? So school, if you see an S, that means the school requested it. An M means the maintenance department requested it. R is roofing,
There's F for,
R is C, FT is floor tile,
Okay.
G is gym, floors. You got P for paving, F for facilities, T for technology.
Have you thought about going on Sesame Street? Because you'd be really good at it. You and the count over there would be great.
I know it, that's right.
You've been doing this a while, haven't you?
For a day or two.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? Oh, yes. Charles?
So I came to your first session to see how this works. I want to learn how it goes. And this actually opened up my eyes when I go into the schools to see what they requested, what's going on, and how to approach it. And some things I sent to Jackson this week, and some things got approved, and certain things didn't get approved. But I look at this process, and I understand maintenance sends theirs in, the school sends their stuff in, flooring comes in, which is under you as well. Everything says it's immediate need, but are we looking at things that could potentially cause a safety issue? Because the team that we put together, I don't think they would know that. Because it's nothing, some principals give a good explanation why they need it, some don't. But is there anything in here that says that, okay, this item in this school, so I say this week, went into a gym, the floor is coming up. Only option that that floor can be done is either rip up all the vinyl, go back to the subfloor, but we don't have the money to put a new floor down, but it's a trip hazard. But that's not here to explain that. It didn't get approved either.
so
Are we looking at immediate needs to say, when they come into the room where Clark would say, these are definitely have to get done?
Yes, let me talk about that, and then the principals can also, so when we first begin the meetings, we begin with the policy 90-30. We talk about how important safety is, and we also dive deep. They go back and ask the principals of that school by their category of, if we don't know something and it was like their S1 and it didn't get approved, we go back as a team and ask them why did you put this as S1? We try to gather all the information. We come back together, we revisit. So it takes 3 to 4 times of us doing this, trying to determine what is true needs of the school system. And I feel like we do a really good job of trying every time to get the input from the principal of that school or the director. Why did they put this in here, and does it fall under safety or security? Because that is our #1 priority. And we talked about that at the very onset, and throughout the whole process, we go into deep dives of every single project that was put on here.
So when the school is sending a request, is 1 the highest or 5 is the highest?
1 is
One
the
is the
highest.
highest. So when they know it's a safety issue, they should be putting that as a S1.
Yes. And when we send out the documentation to the principals from finance with the Google Sheet, we have a training video in it with the manual, and we describe how to do it. We go back to them as we're coming in, as they're being fed into us. If they're not doing that, we go back and call them And Tina Jones has done a tremendous work around this, calling them back, telling them they didn't do their priorities right. Could they please take a look at this and figure out what to do so that our committee knows what they're really meaning to as their top priority?
Okay. So then that leaves me, Clark talked about unbudgeted, excuse me, roofing needs. So I'm trying to see how the system is looking at everything that needs to be done, because as I look at my house, I have a roof on it, the roof leaks, I'm gonna get that fixed. Might need a refrigerator, roof comes first. Because it can cause more damage than what an appliance can cause by breaking it down. So how are we approaching when we come up with unbudgeted needs of $19 million? Did these roofs actually get done, or are we still waiting on money to get?
So there's several factors go into that. We have 1,140 roof areas in Buncombe County Schools. So that's where a roof changes elevation or it's divided by a physical structure. There's 1,140 of those across the county, totaling 4.5 million square feet, plus or minus. There's several things that we look at. We've had outside contractors perform condition studies on our roofs, and we use our own team to do that. So we have our roofs ranked from worst to best. The $19 million is a number that's showing these roofs need to be replaced in the next 5 years. There's only so much work can be done in a year's time. So one thing we take into account is how much money do we need to complete the roofing that can really be done in a year's time. Some sections can't be done while school's going on. Some sections can be. So, this year we chose to push most of our funding for roofing to Article 39. So it's kind of skewed what you're seeing, because there's, in the 4042 budget, the $19 million wasn't funded out of 4042, but it was funded in Article 39. So that number's a little skewed right there. We're really not as bad off as it appears to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we have in November, when we get that funding, we will have enough funding to do the amount of roofing that we can handle in 1 year's time. And then we'll come back again the next year and do the same process.
Okay, then you can never retire. Sorry.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Churchill.
Again, trying to rely on my memory. Did we used to have a code for when it was a safety need?
We do.
Do we?
It's
Under
in
that
there.
priority?
It's in there, and it's in the priority list, and the filter is, there's an ADA for that, and there's safety. And now Tina's gonna go print that for you, and we'll bring you
Okay.
the cheat sheet, because I apologize. We usually have it right in the front of that book.
Okay. I thought we did have something, and I did see where one of these, I can't remember which one it was, which school, but there was, in the description, it did say ADA, so. Okay, thanks.
It need, because I noticed a couple of those, or one at least, that wasn't funded.
So ADA, we focus on those. We try to work with our special needs departments to understanding where the children are moving to, and make sure that we address needs. Like there are some children moving into the TC Robertson area that we're addressing some issues there. We also keep a countywide budget code in case we have an issue that needs immediate need, and we've done that this year, actually, in the TC Robertson district. We use those funds to address an issue that we weren't aware of. So, ADA issues are tricky. They're not, there's not a state law that mandates them to get caught up, but we try to make sure that we really look at those and make sure every child, every person coming to our buildings has equal access to our schools.
Okay. Then I'll have a follow-up with you.
Okay?
All right, any other questions or comments for Clark or Tina? All right, well, thank you again for all the diligence and strategic thinking around getting this magnitude of capital work done in our school system. It's, I'm really impressed with the different options that were devised to actually get this done, whether the bond were to pass or not pass. It's, I know we're in good hands with your team, so thank you very much.
And I'll just say, if PBS tries to call Clark and offer him a job, Dr. Jackson, we need to nip that in the bud real quick. No big bird for him.
And I do want to say, we worked hand in hand with the finance department that's over the School Capital Fund Commission at the county in order to work out all these options so that we could move forward.
And we're going to allow you to have a break.
Thank you very much. All right, we will take a brief 10-minute break. Hello and welcome back to the Buncombe County Board of Education special call meeting. We have returned from a short break, and I believe we are now moving into the local operational budget request proposal. Tina, you have the floor.
We're in the process of bringing you a hard copy of this one, and I apologize. The PowerPoint, is it linked? Okay, the PowerPoint is linked, but we'll get you a hard copy down here. Let's start with our 26-27 operational budget request proposal. All school budgets support and provide the funding to meet the goals of our strategic plan, and I have placed our strategic plan in here for review as a reminder of what all it includes. But everything around our financing is to meet the needs of our students, staff, and support our strategic plan, which also then in hand supports the strategic plan of the county. Within this presentation, our overview, we will cover the 26-27 budget calendar, the overarching budget challenges that we face each year, the board budget priorities that we've worked into the budget based on the feedback that you all provided, the current landscape that we sit in, what we know and what we don't know, the new budget methodology and position allotment that we have developed over the last 2 years through your approval that we've implemented into this hiring season for 26-27, the revenue overview and deep dive of where those revenues come from so that we could balance a budget, and then the budget assumptions that we've made within this budget, and then at the very end, I will make the 26-27 budget recommendation based on all of the feedback that we have gathered plus the assumptions that we've made. Here is the 26-27 budget calendar activities. We started in December of last year, 25, got the best one of two published by DPI, used our state funding allotments in the following year. We reconciled our EC data, got our EC December 1st head count. January, we started moving into reconciling data for our position allotment and project, and to project our ADM, and had that done on January 15th. Then we moved into the 2x2 meetings with the Board of Education to review priorities and position allotment projects on January 26th. And then we did a review of our current position allotment formulas, impact of the new data, sent it to departments for review in January 30th. Late January, early February, we met with all the departments about the discretionary budgets, the non-personnel, the subs, etc. February deadline for feedback from departments regarding the allotments was February 20th. Budget office did the projections for our payroll, estimated state allotments, and prepared the first draft of a 26-27 budget based on that information. Then in March, Leadership and Finance reviewed any budget request changes that were brought. Leadership and Finance and Budget Office worked to balance the budget, address shortfalls by adjusting position allotments, contingencies, or recommend requests to the county. And that will happen coming up soon. The presentation to the principals on the position allotments and new process was March the 11th. That outlined how far we were and all of their feedback. We started having meetings with the draft allotments that were sent out to the principals on March 20th. And then the Associate Superintendent Finance met with principals to discuss the allotments, and it was a marathon. March 23rd through the 30th, we met with every single principal, and directors were involved as well to review their sheets. April the 21st and 23rd, we had another round of 2x2 meetings to go over where we have landed so far with the budget. And then we're today at the actual work session presenting the budget and using the feedback and the allotment model to that extent. May, 7th, next Thursday, you all will vote to approve all of these budgets, hopefully. And then on May 15th, we have to have it over to the county commissioners for them, and they are going to vote this year on June 2nd, is what I'm being told for the different budgets. And then we are going to have to true up our ADM numbers in July and August to see how many kids land in the seats this year and adjust as needed with any staffing that may arise from our needs at that time. There is a contingency built into this budget to address those factors that may happen in June or July or August once the kids are back in seats. October and November, we begin the budget once again. We will bring you, hopefully, a beginning budget, and hopefully there'll be a state budget passed. And sometime in October, November, if it passes earlier, we would bring it earlier, but we don't know. November to June is when the budget amendments and transfers continue throughout the year and maximize our use of funds. This is an annual reoccurrence. We've adjusted it a lot this year with the new allotment model, and we've moved up all of our meetings, including the 2x2s and this actual presentation, because we used to do it on the day of the vote. We would present 4 hours on the day of the vote, and then that afternoon you'd come in and make a vote. So we've also heard that request, and we separated it by a week, so you have a week to review it, in addition to reviewing it in the 2x2 meetings. I don't want to lay this aside. I want to bring this back out. This is due to North Carolina laws. The overarching budget challenges that we have to overcome each year is the North Carolina school boards cannot levy taxes. School boards are not able to issue debt. The local budget is often adopted before the state budget ever passes, and then hiring takes place before the state budget is passed as well. And the state often mandates additional expenses while not funding the expenses. And then the majority of the state and federal funding is based on average daily membership of students that we are trying to align to each and every year since we've had a reduction, drastic reduction in the last 6 years. So we listened and took feedback from the board, and some of the top priorities that wanted to be focused on and built into the budget was school safety, exceptional children needs, equity across the district, arts education, assistant principals, athletics, business efficiencies, balancing the budget, gently landing the plane while we do so, but still being able to maintain a stable fund balance and stay within board policy. We have built inside the budget components of each one of these sectors that we reviewed that has additional dollars built in on top of the base within the allotment model to address and to ensure that these items were prioritized within our budget. So the current landscape, our ADM came in at $21,372, which was another decline of 585. Oh, I'm sorry. It came in at $21,467 this year, our best one of two. We're projecting for 26-27, $21,372, which is a 95 loss for this upcoming year. So that is a much better adjustment, hopefully, that this will come true, or either we'll gain students. But we have done a very different job in the methodology of coming up with our ADM within the allotment model. Mr. Rose has done extensive work on researching out bursts that happen, the true cohort survival rate that has occurred in Buncombe County, and then put different techniques together, mathematical formulas to come up with this projection for 26-27. And then we are projected to transfer out $11.6 million to charter schools this year. And due to the increase in the local funding formula, $1 million more will have to be transferred out to them next year. So 26-27, that will increase based on the amount of local dollars that we receive based on the state law. This year, for 25-26, our ML population has increased 73% since the 13-14 school year, And this year, we're sitting at 13.43% of our total population is ML, multilingual learners. The exceptional children, based on a December 1st head count, is at 14.11%. And just keep in mind that the state allotments that come for exceptional children are capped at 13% for those that are in kindergarten through 12th grade. And this year, our budget, once again, 84% of it goes to human capital, which is our staff, in order to meet the needs of our kids. There's a very small percentage that is not human capital. The landscape for this year, locally funded personnel, remember, this is a snapshot in time. This is right now with our April 30th payroll. We currently have this breakdown of who sits in our Fund 2 that is being paid from local funds fully. And keep in mind, every single staff member that's eligible for local supplement also is paid from the local funds. But it shows you, based on our needs, that there is a multitude of certified staff in here that the state funding and the federal funding formulas do not give us enough funding to cover. So what we know and what we don't know. Currently, there's still no budget, which is unheard of for North Carolina. And there was a short session that went back into play on April 21st. And they're saying that they're still at a standstill between the Senate and House now over the revenue shortfalls that they're expected due to legislation that they passed in the last state budget that lowers the amount of personal income tax, and they're also at odds over Medicaid funding and over corporate taxes as well. So anxious to see what comes about in a short session to turn around a 2-year budget. And Governor Steins has released his budget recommendations, but as usual, the governor's budget is usually never paid attention to for any of the funding sources. It does have significant raises for pay. It would put teachers at the highest pay in the Southeast. It restores master pay. It improves student outcomes for science and reading and advanced teaching roles. And it also puts in there a well-being of students for offering school breakfast, once again, at no cost across the state. And then it has some components in there for much-needed building repairs that's usually not included in the governor's recommendations. And then he also included personnel like counselors, psychologists, social workers, and nurses within his recommendations. The House and Senate have not released a version for each of them for 26, 27, but this was what was in there if it had passed for the 25, 27 year. And then we will see what comes out once they release a new recommendation for each of those, the House and the Senate. But the news is saying that this could become very messy and complicated for all involved if they end up moving to, can't decide and can't make a budget and that may end up going to mini budgets as an alternative, which those are never pleasant. So hopefully they can come to an agreement and get a state budget since it is an election year.
One quick question. Forget it. When we say like the raises, and it says 1.25 average increase for 25, 27, trying to remember, is that they take the 1.25 and they divide it among the years for the budget? So, or is it 1.25 each year?
So for the Senate, yes, it was the 2 years added together divided by 2 averaged 1.25%.
Per year?
Yes.
Okay. So 2.5 for the 2 years.
It don't really work out that way mathematically because of the way it compounds on the next year, but yes, that's an average.
Okay. Thank you.
And then the house had a 6% average over the 2 years. State allotments, they did it different this year. They provided us planning allotments for 26, 27 at the floor. They're calling it the floor. Because in the past, they had always given us technical adjustments built in, and they almost got in trouble last time because they had promised it to us, but then they had to actually take a small mini bill to the legislation to get approved to get the technical adjustments in when they gave that step without any funding last year. So they say from DPI standpoint, they're not going to give out anything but what is the floor and what they've actually have the funding for already approved. So they have given us those planning allotments. That does cause issues if you keep in mind, if the funding, for example, there was some CTE funds and there were some federal funds that came in after December, and so it becomes very hard to align those funds with staffing once it comes in like that. So trying to figure out how to manage this and budget this and plan for the future if they're starting at a floor and then mid-year are going to increase us more than what we were expecting, and we can't bank on that because we can't hire staff that we don't know if we're going to get the funding for. So it's making it really difficult for us with this model moving forward in the state planning allotments being used at the floor. Also with funding in arrears, that started in 22 years ago, and this will be our third year. We are trying to write a line right now with this hiring season for the loss of 585 students using the allotment model, and which equates to around 60 positions or nearly $4 million. That needs to be right aligned because the funding will be reduced by that from the state. And then federal allotments, we have now received news that the U.S. Congress has approved the grant year 27, and most of the federal programs have remained flat across all the states. So DPI will receive similar amounts that they received last year from federal funds. What is different is the formula to calculate this is the majority of that formula is based on census reports, and whether or not people will complete census reports impacts this greatly. And then the amount of direct certs comes into play with direct certifications of Medicaid. So hopefully our federal allotments will remain pretty stable, but that is yet to be seen once the state gets their number and then disperses it based on the formulas that they have built on how it goes out to all the counties. And the good news, the county commissioner's local operational appropriation, we had gone to a local funding formula, and which equated to right at $109 million for the 26-27 year. Keep in mind that that number also does include our community high school number that they pay for, and that is a Fund 8. So you will see two different numbers in here, but it's because of the portion that goes into Fund 8 to cover community high school that they cover through our appropriation. Okay, the new budget methodology and position allotment project that we've all been working on very hard as a team. The position is helping provide cohesion between the separate HR and finance systems that don't talk. They do not communicate, and so we've had a very hard time over the past years trying to build a budget out based on if we don't know the vacancies and vacancies didn't get filled, or what is truly our staffing sheets. And so we did a very deep dive into historical numbers, trying to figure out all the staffing allotments, where they resided, looked at HRMS, tied it with our financial system, and then started building out based on that. And so we've been diving deeper into what it takes to build out a budget from the allotment model that we've built. So this allotment model includes all the positions, over 140 different types of positions that are named. And then it builds out all of the vacancies, and it assumes that there would never be a vacancy, that once somebody leaves, it's filled immediately. So we have to do that to build out a budget for worst-case scenarios so that we are not short. So keep that in mind. This has resulted in approximately 760 positions being budgeted in local fund 2 now instead of the 640. And also the pressure from the state budgets and federal budgets, planning allotments not meeting our needs, pushed more into local. So the use of the new position allotment processes will provide guardrails for position control moving forward, and it should produce a stable environment that we can keep track of all the positions. And so our assumptions that we made, all allotted positions are budgeted for with applicable benefits, meaning all of them have retirement, all of them have health insurance, all of them. And so we know that that doesn't truly play out that way, because some people, their spouse has their health insurance and all that, but we don't know who those are, so we have to build out the budget with that. Allotted positions will be filled immediately when vacated. We know that doesn't happen. We try to get them filled. We also assume there's a 5% certified salary raise. I'm hearing it may be way more than that, but we built in 5 because we went through historical time and we tracked it, and it's usually averaged around 5% even in an election year. So that's our assumption, and that's how it's built. Non-certified salary increases were billed at 3% increases, and then the retirement rate was billed at 25.4% that we as an employer have to match on every single employee that has retirement. The health insurance rate is $8,905. That was the only thing the Senate and House original budget recommendations agreed upon. So we went with that amount. And from my meeting this past week with the DPI, it sounded like that was almost identical to what's going to come out. So hopefully that and the health and the retirement rate are spot on once a state budget actually comes out, or they actually provide a retirement and health insurance rate. And as I stated earlier, we put $1 million in for the fall position contingency for non-EC in case for things that come up that we don't know about that arises within a 26-27 budget year. And then we added $500,000 for EC contingency, which we will use Medicaid funds to cover that contingency, depending on if new issues arise that we have not budgeted for and couldn't plan for.
Tina,
Yes.
can you go back to that slide, please? I still am not sure why, but I struggle to understand what's driving the move from 640 locally funded positions to 760.
Okay, so let me give you a real good example. We went through and identified, part of it is there was about 30 to 35 positions that's in the allotment manual that we did not budget for last year. We've never budgeted for them. We are budgeting for them. Therefore, it pushes more of this total dollar that we've got to pay for salaries into local, because we only have this amount of state and this amount of federal that will cover this. So we had to push them into local to get them paid for. We've identified those. There's some others. The state for custodians, because of custodians that we want to make sure all of those are in state dollars because of worker comp issues and other things. Those funds from the state that cover that category, which there's other things in there besides custodians, those funds have continued to shrink. So we've had to put more and more assistants and other personnel into local than we did last year. And so that's from these planning allotments being at the floor and not having enough funding to cover as many staff as they did last year. So federal is having to pick up, local is having to pick up where federal and state allotments are not funding the number of staff that it takes for us to meet the needs of our kids. I hope that better explains it.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Thorpe, if you would, if you just describe as well how a flat federal allotment this year and potentially a smaller federal allotment this year is impacted by the increase in retirement and state health numbers going up and the federal dollars don't go up, how that also.
I will say that now because I have a slide on that when we get to that point. So with that federal dollars staying flat, every time any of these state add-ons, the retirement that we pay, the employer side, the retirement that we pay, it won't pick up that piece of it. So meaning the whole salary increases, so it picks up less and less of the federally funded people, and so that gets pushed down into local. So we have to cover the matching for all full-time equivalent employees that are eligible for those benefits, but that flat amount of federal funds does not cover these increases at all. So local ends up picking that up. Does that make sense? So that is another component. Okay. The revenue overview and deep dive. So State Fund 1, also known as Fund 1, there's no state budget. We do have those planning allotments that are considered the floor, and so that is putting more pressure on local. Local Fund 2, we were given the funding formula at 37.76%. We did not have a need to adjust that since the ADM did not fluctuate more than 2%. This is where you're seeing a little bit of a different number because this is what's actually going into Fund 2 is 108.6 versus the 108.9 that you saw, because the 276 for community high does not go into Fund 2, it goes into Fund 8. And so I didn't want to complicate that, but you need to know why those numbers are different. Federal Fund 3, that's where we don't know for sure, but we're thinking that it's going to be very similar to being held flat. I'm just hoping that our census reports and the calculation that they use remains at least what we had previously. Because 2 years ago, we got hit hard when the census reports were not completed, and it did not truly reflect how many of those individuals that we're actually educating. And so I'm hoping that that will be as close to the represented number that we're actually serving and meeting the needs of those kids. Capital Fund 4, those we've talked about, the sales tax for Article 40, 42, and Article 39 have significantly rebounded from Hurricane Helene, and I'm very thankful for that. Because there's about 18.6 million for 40, 42, and then Article 39, you saw all those numbers that we're hopeful that the 28 million will be for W.D. Williams, and then we will offset depending on what happens, whether or not anything else happens with Article 39. But we will be able to move forward with W.D. Williams at 28 million in July regardless. School Nutrition Fund 5. This is still up in arms with the federal USDA. It's the main source of funding. There's a lot of uncertainty in the future of funding around that with the federal government. And the other thing that is unknown is the uncertainty related to maintaining our community eligibility provision. It's a 4-year progression, and to see how our numbers end up with direct certifications and if we can stay within the community eligibility provision or not. So more to come on that in the next year or so, depending, because we've got we're starting our 3rd year, and so we'll see how this ends up depending on our direct certifications and the percentages it takes. And it takes full participation, around 80% at each school, so we keep pushing participation of school meals at each school. Child Care Fund 7 is an enterprise, and we're still uncertain about the grant from the county at this point. We've been told a number. I'm not going to say that because it's not been voted on yet, and it is a little less than last year, but hopefully we will get that, and that will be voted on in June as well at the county commissioner meeting. And then other specific revenues, Fund 8, it's mostly grants and very restricted about what you can use it for. And then one of the pieces in there is the indirect cost that comes from school nutrition. And there's concern around staying, the law is you have to have 4 months of operating balance in order to charge the full 8% indirect cost that covers many, many, many things here in Buncombe County School. So hopefully we can still maintain a full 8% of indirect cost as we move forward with the budget. 26-27 revenue projections. This is the breakdown of state, local, federal, and other specific revenues that we are projecting by a pie chart. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into that revenue. From the state level, they're still weighing out, trying to see if they could move exceptional children to a weighted funding model. They're still in the planning stages of that. They've got a committee, a pilot team looking at it. And then they've also looked at just raising the cap more. It's at 13%, since almost every LEA across the state is higher than 13% of EC population. So I don't know what's going to come out of that, but keeping our eye on it to see. And then funding in arrears, working through that to determine the state is definitely close to $4 million cut from the loss of 585 students. And we will move forward because we don't see them coming back yet, so hopefully we will plateau though. And we continue to realign staffing needs and may need to go a little deeper into realignment depending on where the revenues actually land. And then here's a breakdown of our local Fund 2, what the current year is being spent on. 71% of our Fund 2 dollars is spent on personnel, and very little on purchase services, around 12%, because contracted services, we've had to hire more and more contracted services that can't, if we can't hire staffing. And then supplies and materials and transfers to charter schools is around 12% of our total allotment that we get from the county in Fund 2. And on the left, I just outlined our formula-based local current expense that we were approved for, and that runs for 3 fiscal years, fiscal year 27, 28, and 29, and we'll see how that pans out. The only concern I have is which I still see there's growth built in, but depending on the tax rate that they apply, so we will see what the tax rate ends up being based on the value of the property. And then as we stated here, depending on salary increases for both state and locally funded personnel, this will cause an increase to local supplement, which will impact our local funds. And so we're waiting to see what the state budget comes out with salaries. And keep in mind that a decrease in ADM can result in a shift of funds towards the charter schools due to our percentage split. That happens each year. We will see, we do that every year, best one of two. Here's the Fund 3 federal funds, a deep dive into it. It shows our historical percentage of how much state, local, and federal is each year in revenue. And changes continue to be made at the federal level, causing uncertainty around the future of the U.S. Department of Education and the federal funds that they administer. But here's a breakdown for you for 25-26, Title I, $7.6 million, supports 35 teachers, 21 coaches, 52 assistants, 14 tutors, 3 parent liaisons, 1 director, and 3 office staff. The IDA for 25-26 is $4.73 million. It supports 112 EC assistants. Other for 25-26 is $4.02 million, and it supports 41 staff. Federal budgets largely sustain or very modestly increases federal support for education for 26-27 school year. And the new White House budget proposal that was just released in April, once again, calls for major cuts to the education funding and consolidation of some of these funds back into those block grants that he talked about. And so it could really impact us on our Title II, Title III, and Title IV. We'll have to wait and see if that comes through or not in the future years. And then because federal funding is unrelated to state legislation increases, these funds are not increased in the tune with the state legislation increases, and therefore this can put an impact on our local funds. All right. Uh-huh.
Give me an idea of, on the left-hand side, other, the 41 staff members. Give me an idea.
I'm gonna call on Kristen, because she's our queen of our federal funds budgets. What category, come up to the mic and you can speak real quick. What is in the other 4.02 million of 41 staff?
So those are going to be our staff that are funded through Title III, which are our supplemental ML supports. It is also our migrant education programs, our homeless youth and education programs, Title II, which supports teacher professional development, and our Title IV funds, which provides supplemental support for other student supports.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Okay, our 26-27 budget assumptions. From our 2x2 meetings, we put this together so that you could see the significant changes that are incorporated into the 26-27 budget and the dollar amount associated with them. I want to point out what's very important. The top line, the 25-26 Fund 2 balance budget, $103,459,217. That's not what the county gave us. Over on the left, below the budget picture, in 25-26, the general fund local operation appropriation was $95,951,358, and then the Article 39 appropriation for operations is $3,479,784, because the Article 39 goes into a different category for supporting operations. So what is at the top is our budget. And so if you'll remember, there's $4.5 million put in a fund balance to balance this budget for 25-26. And so that's why those numbers are higher to meet the expenditures that are coming from the local fund. Now, taking that, what we built in that changed, that made significant increases was the 5% certified salary increase, a 3% non, the retirement rate, the health insurance rate, the position allotment reduction, hopefully around 40 positions through attrition, and then state funding reduction, ADM loss is $4 million, and the state funding shortfall of PRC 029-003, and that's where I was talking about the custodians, the teacher assistants, that increases $1,078,000 into this budget. The need to cover EC assistance shortfall from federal Medicaid funds is another $1.9 million. And so that millions there, all of these are adding up to personnel that's going into local that changes that number we were talking about a minute ago. The strings and orchestra staffing for our arts was $217,000. The fall staffing contingency, $1 million. The athletic stipend, $257,000. The charter school transfer increase based on the local funds increasing is $1 million. Our property cost, our insurance is going up, and then also the overhead for electricity, water, utilities is built into this, $648,000. School safety for additional SROs, $139,000. Exceptional children contracted services, another $200,000. And so this is an increase of 11.883, which then the total revenues needed is 115 to match the expenditures, 115,343 and $115.
Sorry, I have another couple of questions. SRO, what part do we pay of, is it part of their salary?
We are billed from the sheriff's department. They have the contract, and we pay the sheriff's department for a portion of their salary.
A portion of the salary. And then what is the EC contracted services?
So we're having a really hard time hiring PTs, OTs, and psychologists to meet the needs of the IEPs. And so we're having to contract those out, and we've had to add additional $200,000 into this budget to make sure that we meet the needs of the IEPs for students.
Okay.
How many SROs are we adding?
Three,
How many?
adding additional 3 to this budget.
Oh, okay.
So, Tina, if I may, and Dr. Jackson, I'll rely on you a little bit here too for just the flow of this meeting and discussion, but there are some items on this page that I think that there's some, we've already had a couple of questions right there about a couple of them. I know that I have a few as well. I think Ms. Churchill may have a couple. Would it be helpful for us to let you finish the whole thing and then come back to this?
It would be very helpful for me,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
Let's do that. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. The 26-27 ADM projection methodology is very different. Kindergarten enrollment was projected using 2 primary factors: the local birth rate data from the 5 years prior, reflecting the typical age of incoming kindergarten, and a weighted average of the percentage of eligible students who actually entered the door at Buncombe County Schools over historical time. 1st through 12th grade, the enrollment for grades 1 through 12 was projected using a weighted average of historical cohort progression rates. This measures the percentage of students who advance from one grade level to the next in successive years. And then charter schools, the enrollment has gradually climbed since 16-17, and we're assuming an increase of 0.5% unless we discover anything else. But in this model, it was built at a 0.5%, so increase that we are expecting. So this is showing that our projection was, or for this upcoming year, is by school, by grade. We think we're going to be down 95 students, and hopeful that this will turn around. But this is our projection and how we built out the allotment model.
Tina, one question. The charter school enrollment increase, that's total number, that's their total enrollment number, correct? Or is that, when you say an increase of 0.5%, is that specifically charter school enrollment from students that are leaving Buncombe County schools?
It's the actual students that should be going to Buncombe County schools that reside in Buncombe County, that would be our student, that are going to charter schools. And so that is, we true this up monthly, and we know how many students, there's around 3,000. And so we know how many, and we know which schools. And so it's a 0.5% increase over those students.
Okay, thank you.
Another budget assumption is the impact on potential salary increases to our Fund 2 budget. The state legislated salaries directly impact local and the federal funding source used to pay these employees. 760 FTE are projected to be paid from local funds next year. Salary increases for both state and locally funded personnel cause an increase in local supplement, which is paid from local funds. Federal funds, there are 223 right now FTEs on this last payroll. Because this funding is unrelated to state legislation, these funds are not increased in the tune of a state budget increase, and therefore this impacts our local funds also. We're continuing to write a line. These are the actual numbers from April of 2022, March 2025, April of 2026, our permanent FTEs, and then also on the right-hand side is the best one of 2 ADM. And the percentage that we've decreased, trying to write a line, but yet still meet the needs of the students. This is our Buncombe County Schools budget recommendations for 26-27 budget year. The total proposed 26-27 local operating budget would be $108,633,973 from the county. Fines and forfeitures, we're guessing to come in at $450,000. Interest earned around $100,000, and sales tax refunds that we receive around $50,000. So total local revenues would be $109,233,973. The estimated expenses that we just covered was $114,085,868, and we also talked about the million that we put in for contingency to bring our total expenditures to $115,085,868. We would use fund balance of $5,851,895, and this is assuming that the allotment model, based on the projections that we used, would be met during this hiring season. And to summarize it a little differently, the $11,883,898 year-over-year increase to local would be $4.3 million in local salary and benefits. The allotment model methodology and board priority supports that we talked about was $4.5 million, and the immutable cost of operations request is $2 million. And then the charter school transfer increase is the $1.1 million increase. Okay. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Any questions from the board at this moment? I have a couple myself, but I'd like to hear from the board first if you have any.
Can I ask a question about the property insurance experienced increases? And I'm not surprised by that, but are we, I know in the past that we really focused on looking at local options. Have we expanded our search on property insurance services?
Yes, so let me explain that. We put out to bid every so often for an agent. Our agent is Surrey Insurance. They have received all of our packages. Surrey got bought out by a national company. They have fingers reaching all across the United States. And they currently have our bids out, our packages out for bid. And so they have it all broken down by property, inland marine, workers' comp, the whole gamut. We have a ton of different packages by each category, and they're all out for bid right now. Cybersecurity is another one, like there's all of these. So they are being searched and put out all across the United States, basically, for insurance companies to bid on. The Hurricane Helene impact has impacted all of us, especially Buncombe County, with the amount of damage that was done and how many claims we have filed and how much that impacted, because you have to file every single bit of that on insurance first, and then that changes your risk, your liability risk ratio, and so that has impacted us. And then we're awaiting to see how much the packages will come in for. But to answer your question, it is being searched across the whole United States for insurance companies to bid on our packages.
So then, I guess, I would hope, and even with the Helene issues, that having a bigger net, we might see some better offers.
I'm hopeful in that, but the world of insurance, with all the natural disasters that have happened across the United States and the cost of everything and the inflation rate that has gone up to repair those things, has continued to make insurance rise astronomically.
And then I guess my only other question is, have we also, considered, again, with the North Carolina School Board Association options?
Yes.
Are they part of that?
The state level, let me give you an example. They were amazed at the packages that we actually do have when I started filing the insurance and then had to turn it over to FEMA. The majority of our neighbors had $100,000 per building that was their deductible.
Okay.
Ours was not. Ours was 10,000. And so the deductible per building, based on the rate being lower, would not have benefited us at all, based on the amount we would have had to come up with the number of buildings that we had to submit for our claims. But we have looked at that, trying to weigh it out to see if the state insurance would be a better way to go. But I met with all of our, across the state, the CFOs openly talked about this, and some of them have the state because of, they do not have the funds to cover the insurance packages that are, that actually benefit the LEA better. And so they were with the state insurance, and it is not better than what we have. But it, you know, cost versus what you get coverage for.
Sure, no, that's actually a great thing to know, and I think, again, maybe something we wouldn't have even known had there not been the hurricane.
That is a true statement.
So, okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
This is what I want to highlight, sitting down with Tina and her team and dealing with stuff locally. When you have a commercial building, insurance is the key on how you protect yourself in the long run. And you might have to pay more, because I know with my church, we're paying more, but I have more covering than I have with local people here in North Carolina. So that's a shout out to the finance team, because that protected us when Helene came into our area. And for FEMA to say, and for the state to say that yours is better than what we can do, that speaks a whole lot, that they are not just looking at insurance policies, they looking how to best keep us safe and get the best money out of it when that policy has to be challenged to get income back in for what is lost. Because there's a lot of things that are going on in Jacksonville, because I'm sending emails like crazy, and they tell me, oh, this is funded by FEMA, we get this back because of Helene. That's nice to hear that it's not coming out of our pocket, our insurance is paying for it, and we're getting stuff put back into the schools because of the event that happened in there, so.
Thank you. That was, we have done amazing work. The team has done amazing work. Clark's team has helped tremendously with the projects, and technology has helped tremendously with their side of what impacted the technology components. Like, we have worked endlessly together amongst the departments, building it out, filing every claim. And to put it in perspective, we have way more claims than any other entity in Buncombe County or in the state as far as the Helene event. And we're almost double what the county's projects were that we had to actually upfront and make sure that we had the fund balance and the cash flow. And then we have gotten most of it back. We're very close. We're getting really close. We're in the last final hurdles, and those hurdles are going to be lengthier, but we are way closer than hearing about Hurricane Florence that happened in 2018 and then took 5 and 6 years before the LEAs on the coast actually got their payments from FEMA. So we have made great progress, and it's because of the team and the teamwork that we have put together to make those projects happen. And then there are some projects that we're going to go after, and you're going to see soon. The ones that insurance and FEMA are not covering, we're going after the state dollars that have been sitting there from the original budget that was put forth for construction and capital. But it clearly said you had to be both denied from FEMA and insurance. So we are close to going after those projects.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Cheatham?
I have a few. Tina, after this year's budget, what is the projected fund balance?
When we finish 25, 26, I think, and there's a lot of thinking and math going into this, we're going to use around $1 million or so of our fund balance, which was at 18 million. And so we will be somewhere around 16.5 or 17, I think, when we come to June 30th.
And second, can you just explain again the $1 million we are setting aside for the fall contingency? Could you just speak about how those funds could be used?
Yes, so we have a team that's going to be reviewing this in the fall when, let me just give a random example. If PEP needs there's additional kids placed there, and we need additional EC teachers or EC assistants that we didn't build into the ratio, the model, because there's a state ratio of how many students to teachers and assistants, then there will be a bucket of this contingency that will need to be used to put a teacher and assistant there to cover needs that we didn't foresee coming. Because if kids transfer in and we don't know that there's a need and we didn't budget for it, we've set this aside in order to handle it. And then that million, there's 500,000 for EC, so that was an EC example. There's other needs if something happens at a high school and we didn't budget for staffing that we're having, or it could be elementary, we're having behavioral issues, it's not an EC student. We need a teacher assistant to help handle the situation. It doesn't fit in our model, but there is a special need that needs to be addressed for behavior that's not EC. They would bring it to the committee, and the committee would approve that a staff would be placed there. We would hire a new allotted position for it to help meet. These are all to meet the needs of students. And it all depends on what kind of student arrives during the fall so that we can figure out if we've budgeted accordingly or not and where to put it.
Yeah, so I just had some, following some questions I've heard and thought of myself around some of the budget proposal, the list of significant changes incorporated in the 2026-2027 budget proposal. How many string/orchestra staffing are we adding with that 217, 255?
So there's one more newly allotted position, and then there is different components added inside the arts and orchestra and strings that will be the other pieces of the dollars that make up that 217.
So it's one staff and then other components, so.
Adding to the current staffing, changing the way that they are distributed among the schools, and then one newly allotted to help alleviate that process.
Okay. And then on the athletic stipends, one thing I still don't quite understand. I understand that's to support effectively coaching allotments or coaching stipends for additional sports, or at least about half of it's for additional sports at middle and high school. Is that correct?
So there's a 5% increase to all staffing, and that would also include the model with the new sports added. So we built out all of the salaries for the stipends based on all of them being filled, and if we had it at every school. So that 5% increase over staffing, stipends for coaches, and then the increase below is for the new sports that would have a new coaching supplement being given out at all schools if they were all fully actually participating. That I had to budget for a worst case scenario, which probably will not come to fruition, but not all schools will have all of those in 26, 27, but in case they do, we have budgeted for them.
Yeah, so I'm just, it confuses me.
I'm sorry.
Sincerely, because it sounds like to me that maybe a couple of schools said, hey, we have a new sport, but we don't have a budgeted coaching stipend to cover it. And so then in this budget proposal, maybe we just said, well, in order for us to support that new sport with a coaching stipend, for those two schools, we need to budget for all the schools, even though we know that, say, half of them don't have the student interest to have that sport. So I guess I'm just looking for some guidance on exactly, I have an example that I'm with one of these sports that's, it's confusing me to see that there's gonna be a stipend budgeted for, but, that particular sport has not been allowed to be created at the school yet,
Okay, so we were budgeting for a worst-case scenario for what is about to be sanctioned. And if it doesn't become sanctioned, it won't be paid.
What does
But
that mean?
I'll let Dr. Jackson answer that.
Thank you, Ms. Thorpe. So some of the schools with some of the new sports haven't moved forward because of the funding model. And so as you know, equity is a core value. And so if we say we're going to support a sport at one of our 6 traditional high schools, we want to be able to support that sport at all 6 of our traditional high schools. And so by putting that coaching supplement in place for schools that may already have the program, we're also putting it in place for those schools that might want to have the program but didn't have access to the funding or didn't choose to use access to the funding to go ahead and do offer the sport as a club sport. And so I think that this is one step that will allow that specific situation to go forward at that specific school, because now if the board approves this through the budget cycle, that coaching supplement would be in place. We recognize that not all 6 schools will have all of those sports year one, and so we also know that regardless of board decisions, we're using fund balance to balance our budget, and so any of those funds that are unspent there allow us to use less of our fund balance to balance our budget at the end of the year. And so if we choose to do it for one school, I would recommend to the board that we do it for all of our schools so we don't create inadvertently haves and have-nots across Buncombe County.
Okay, thank you. And is there a defined process for how new sports get added to a school's offering?
Yes, sir, and I won't get into the weeds. As the board is aware, I served for 7 years on the board of directors for the High School Athletic Association. And so various groups will come forward saying they'd like to start a sport. One of the most recent examples was women's wrestling. And so the High School Athletic Association allowed young ladies to start wrestling, even though it had traditionally been a male sport, on the men's teams. Then they moved along as the numbers grew to do an invitational tournament. And as the numbers continued to grow, it reached the level, and there's a tipping point where the High School Athletic Association actually sanctions the sport. And once a sport is sanctioned, there's a state championship. The state championship counts towards things like the Wells Fargo Cup that schools will earn based on the success of their totality of their athletic programs. And so at the High School Athletic Association level, it's based on the number of schools participating in that sport. And so in addition to the numbers or the sports you see listed there, there are other sports that are growing across the state, sports like rugby, for example. There's a push for pickleball to become a sanctioned sport. There's always many sports that are being pushed along, but there has to be a certain number of schools participating across the state before it becomes sanctioned. But the High School Athletic Association governs that process. For our supplement here in Buncombe County schools, we've only offered supplements, coaching supplements, for those sports that are sanctioned by the High School Athletic Association. And so a school may have what the high schools refer to as club sports. Club sports are any co-ed, co-recreational sport the school may want to have, but it's done either through their booster club or fundraising, but there's not a coaching supplement that comes through the school system. The school system has traditionally limited coaching supplements to sanctioned sports.
Thank you. Just one more question along that line. So locally, within our school system, is there a defined process whereby a school would decide to adopt a new sport or not adopt a new sport? Is there a threshold of interest, or is that just up to the individual school? Or
That's a great question. It's left up to the principal to make the recommendation. Usually leans pretty heavily on the athletic director. Considerations they make are, one, the number of students who are interested in a particular sport. They also consider things like staffing, because if we have a sport, we have to have folks who serve gate duty or folks who serve coaching, et cetera. But the school system itself does not have a defined process for how a school accepts a sport. I will say that our schools are competitive, and so when we see a sport pop up at one school, it tends to pop up pretty quickly at the others. Men's volleyball is an example of that. That's grown in terms of number of schools that are participating. And I know the situation you're referring to, and my feeling is that would go forward.
Yeah, I was just curious if the value of budgeting for this stipend ahead of time, even though it's a little bit unknown as to which specific schools might add these or not, that if the schools had a hurdle before that was specific to, we're not adding this sport because we don't have a defined coaching stipend for it, that this would potentially remove that hurdle.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That helps me a lot. Thank you for talking that out. Yeah, and so the other, I did have a quick question about SROs. Do we know, so this SRO support, do we have a total number of SROs that?
It will put us right at 28.
At 28, okay, great, thank you. I think the other item that I've picked up on that there's questions from, I think more than just me, is around specifically the EC Assistnet funding that we had addressed 2 or 3 years ago. And there's a couple of questions specific to that in relation to like fund balance. Because as I understand it, that's roughly, if we were to move those staff into a full 8-hour day, that's effectively a $900,000 expense
Annually.
annually. We are already, as I understand it, if I'm doing my math right, our fund balance policy is that we are meant to keep 1/12 of the local revenue,
Correct?
which I believe calculates to somewhere around $9 million.
That's correct.
Is our target fund balance minimum, you might think.
A little over 9.
A little over 9, okay.
Correct.
And so in the current budget proposal, we are already utilizing $5.8 million of fund balance to cover all the key components that you are in the proposal. That assumes that the allotment model is followed 100%, which I understand there's going to be potentially a more gentle adjustment period to get to that, true alignment with the allotment model. So somewhere maybe, who knows, like the number I had written down was $2.5 million of additional fund balance
Yes.
to cover that,
If we don't meet the allotment model, it could be additional 2.5 million.
that slow draw. But, so I understand that an additional $900,000 expense effectively would, I mean, if the numbers you talked about earlier, if we're using the lower of the two of 16.5, you start subtracting 5.9, 2.5, and then you add a $900,000 on top of that. That does put us likely below the 1/12 number.
That is true math.
Because, well, the number went up. So it's tricky for me personally because we did propose to do this a few years ago, and we've said that the revenue needed to be better, right? We need to be in a better financial situation to actually make that happen. We believed in the value of it, and so what I'm somewhat struggling with is that, as I did the math as well, and I think you kind of confirmed it, is that net, right, between state and local funds, we are $5 million year over year better in 2026, 2027 than we are in this current school year. that there was a reduction in state funding, but an increase in local funding to the degree of it's a net $5 million gain year over year of revenue, excluding federal. Yeah. So that's where I'm struggling to not recommend that we go ahead and proceed to make that move for the EC assistant positions. And so I want to understand kind of what your perception of the level of risk around our fund balance might be with the new current local funding model that we have of the 37.76%. And I understand in year one, you know, we're looking at last year's tax revenue. There's been a reappraisal. Next year's tax revenue theoretically is higher. So at least in my head, and maybe I'm doing the math wrong, it seems like year over year for the next couple of years, at least our local supplement funding, our local funding is increasing. And so I'm just curious to hear from you about putting this in the context of fund balance. How risky do you feel about being at this $7.5 to $9.5 million range just straight out of the gate if we approve this budget with the EC assistance included?
From a financial perspective, I'm nervous around fund balance, around having the amount to have a cash flow that is necessary month to month, knowing that our monthly bills are around $33 million. And not knowing yet the tax rate from the county to know for sure that the growth is from the evaluations is going to definitely come to us, because I need to see that tax rate. The other piece is I need to see how far we can get with attrition to meet this allotment model. To be straight up and honest with where I feel comfortable, I need those two things first to know where we're going to end up with fund balance, that we don't get back into a very risky situation that we were at a few years ago where it was very difficult monthly with cash flow.
When do you think you'll have those pieces of information?
We should know the tax rate by June, because they have to vote, they have to know to do their budget. And then attrition usually happens right now through this hiring season through the end of June, that we have our attrition numbers. Usually everybody's doing their retirements right now, everybody's changing counties, moving with kids, whatever they're doing. Those usually happen right now. And so within the next couple months, we should have a better idea from leadership standpoint of where the attrition has happened or not happened to meet those allotment model numbers.
So if we didn't as a board explicitly make a motion that's approved to include the EC assistant shift from 7 to 8 hour days, if we didn't do that by next Thursday, is there another opportunity to do that down the road? Like once the financial picture becomes crystal clear a month or two from now, and we come back and we're actually in maybe a little bit better shape than you're projecting here, is there an opportunity to do that without a board motion to do it?
You all can bring that to the board at any time, and you could ask for an analysis of the fund balance, and you could ask for that as a vote and as a recommendation from the board. You all have the right to do that at any time, knowing that it will impact the budget, and then we would provide you the budget numbers of what it's going to do.
Do you feel like there are other, I mean, the reason why I picked out the coaching stipend first is because we're budgeting money for things that are unknown in that case. We don't know how many people are actually going to have women's flag football. It could be one school, but we're budgeting $44,000 for it. So, and it all adds up to, you know, $88,000. So, I mean, my question is, what I'm trying to gauge is, are there other things like that within our budget that we're budgeting for, but they're somewhat unknown. Because for me, if it's a $900,000 known calculated cost to move EC assistants from 7 to 8 hours, that's a known number that feels like, I just personally feel like really comfortable about budgeting for something like that that's known because it's headcount oriented and that. Whereas we have some of these other items that we're budgeting for, and it's a bit, there's still question marks around, are we actually gonna use those funds or not? And so it's kind of like, it creates a sense of, I believe that there could be other things out there that may not pan out that we're budgeting for, that we're not actually gonna use, that could be in excess of $900,000 a year. And that we would be easily covering that move, and I believe that that move for EC assistance is gonna be very impactful, both for, for many, many reasons, for educational outcomes for students, and that's why I'm here. And so, classroom management and all of the other things I think are important enough to me to bring it up. But being so close to our fund balance target, I'm always certainly wary of that. And so I'm trying to get a sense of how risky is that to be at that point? Are there other areas in the budget that are, I'm not gonna say fluff, but I'm gonna say like we're budgeting for things that we're maybe over budgeting on purpose because we think something might develop, but we may not know till 3 years from now. You see what I mean?
The other piece that's very vital is the state raises. If they come in 8 or 12%, oh my goodness, we're in a pickle with our fund balance. And so there's only a couple things in this budget that they're open positions, vacancies that we can't get filled, that we have in there, 30 to 40. That's in there, but those are true vacancies that at any point in time we could fill them. The other piece is we do budget for everyone to have health insurance that we don't know will necessarily have health insurance, but that's a small amount of the ones that don't carry it. Usually they always carry it for themselves. And so we have to pay that. And so we put that in there. And so that's a very small number. And so we tried to get as close as possible with this budget, but be as conservative so that we don't have a mishap if something else does happen and this state comes through with different salary increases. I will have to bring all that back to you all to see what it does to the budget.
Okay.
So that's another major thing that needs to happen before.
Greg wants to follow up on that.
Well, my question is, isn't the 112 a number that was set in a policy here? And isn't that a hurdle that we could move if it's getting in the way of our operating?
Yes, when it goes out of compliance, and it has back in 2019 and 18, we were out of compliance for several years. We have to the finance brings a motion and a memo to you all telling you all that we're out of compliance with our board policy 8100, and that is 1/12 of local revenues brought in from the county, not total operation. We developed that policy here within Buncombe County Schools.
But not just for this situation, but could this board change that fraction?
You can
So-
change the
So that
fraction.
you and your team had a little more wiggle room,
You
if
can
that makes
change-
sense?
The board can change that policy by fractions, or it can change it by the type of expenditures it's looking at versus local or total operation. You have the ability to as a board, to change that policy. That's a local policy, and you can change that policy.
Okay. Also, could a compromise be to increase the time of those employees to 7.5 instead of to 8 in this budget?
Well, let me say a little more to that. I don't want to go to halves, if at all possible,
Okay.
with the system that we have to operate within. And that is a nightmare on the payroll side. But if that is what the board wants, we would make it happen. But that is a lot of issues within our payroll system.
Ms. Clemens, I see you got a question too. I think Amy does as well. I needed to follow up with something real fast, on my train of thought there. So is it correct to say that, I mean, right now, what I presume the calculation would be showing is that all 136, 63, how many is that? Do you remember the number? Here it is.
Finish.
146 is the calculation for $900,000 of impact for 146 EC assistants. We're presuming that 100% of that $900,000 would come from local funds. But isn't it, I would presume that if we pay our EC assistants, if we have an allotment from the state that pays for a certain number of EC assistants, that some of that $900,000 would be covered by state funds, not local funds, correct?
No, because it would if we had the allotment, but EC does not even cover what we currently employ. So every bit of this would hit local because we've already maxed out our state dollars with the current staff and the current hours that we get from them.
But we do pay for a certain proportion of EC assistance with state funds, correct?
Correct. We maxed it out.
So why would we not?
It's mainly federal funds that we use for EC assistance.
Okay, sorry, federal.
And that's a set dollar amount, so if the cost of the EC assistance goes up, so say we have 3% pay increases, those federal dollars
Don't.
aren't going to increase. So that means we can pay fewer EC assistants out of those dollars, and that goes into local money.
Okay.
Some of our federal grants, we see how much money we've got, and then we decide how many staff we're going to cover from that. EC assistants don't work that way because it's governed by IEPs and the decision of how many assistants we need. That's not controlled by the dollars that we have. That's controlled by that.
And but there's the funding cap from the state is set at 13%. So, but those are federal dollars flowing through the state is what?
That's what that
you're saying.
is. It's mostly federal dollars, but it comes, when I'm saying it comes through the state always.
Yeah, same pot of money we're talking about, and it's capped by the federal government. And, well, I don't understand the state government, but
Yes.
who does? Okay, I think I'm good for now. Kim, did you have a question?
Actually, probably more of a statement. I totally agree with Mr. Elliott, because when he and I became board members, one of the things we talked about was EC and EC assistance. It may not be a priority for others, but for me, and I said it in the 2x2 meeting, if you've ever subbed or been in an EC class, when you don't have someone in there with you before school and at 2:30 to get 2 kids all over to the bus and 2 other kids to car riders and 3 other kids and second load bus, it is chaos. And so bottom line is, and y'all know I'm just bottom line, I think there's a lot of what ifs. There's gonna be a lot of ifs in here. And I'm gonna try to skinny it down, Rob, since I'm asking too many questions. But I would say we put that in the budget and find a place to cut elsewhere. EC is not the place to cut. And so I'm very passionate about that group of students and the teachers, because we lose those teachers. We lose those teacher assistants because of the stress. So my point is, put it back in the budget and then find another place to reduce.
Thank you, Ms. Clemens. Ms. Churchill, did you have a question down there?
I did, and I kind of wanted to just kind of also let you know kind of where I've come from, because I feel like I might be a little flip-floppy here from where we were. But, so when it was first presented, and thank you for that last week, because I think those were things that I had not been thinking of, were like the bus drivers. And of course, then I was thinking, oh my gosh, we're gonna lose bus drivers. That's terrible, we can't do that. So that's really what drove me to say no on the hours for the EC, because I was thinking about that. We can't afford to lose the bus driver hours. Now, I immediately got into the car, started driving home, started thinking about it, and then, realized that not every one of these positions had additional duties that they were being paid for. So then I'm wondering, is it possible to look at either making it optional, where I would assume most EC assistants that are driving buses would prefer to stay at that rate because of the higher pay for a bus driver? And could we get a figure of what it would look like if only the ones that are not working 8 hours, went into that figure? What would that number look like, cash, funding wise? And then to make sure too, I want to just be sure, the ones that are bus drivers, that bus driver is that's bringing them up to 8 hours, right? They're not working overtime, usually.
That's not the case.
Okay.
The majority of them are on afternoon or morning routes that are over the hour.
Okay. Are they getting overtime then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, is that overtime for the bus driver rate? Or
No, by
the
state
EC?
law,
Okay.
it's a ratio that is under state law, that within each of our, it's prorated based on the number of hours in that week that are each job assignment. And it's a very specific formula that the state derives to get our overtime calculation for those jobs.
Okay, so those people are 8 hours already or possibly more. And then our 7 hours are, I'm sure, stay over sometimes, and even though they're not supposed to. I've also heard some of them have done something that's really not good, and that's clock out and continue working. And being in healthcare, been there, done that. So I understand when your heart is in a space, but that's a big nightmare also, that we don't really want to go down that road. So I think for me, I agreed to the athletic stipends, because I was also thinking along the lines of, well, we just can't do the EC. That's just a done thing because of those bus drivers. And y'all know that I'm a huge arts supporter, so I can't even believe that I'm bringing this up, and I have a lot of orchestra moms that are going to probably not be happy with me. I think, too, that as important as that is, both the athletic and the orchestra money, it's not as important right now, I think, as the need for the EC and where we are with how that affects all of our students in the classroom. And I think we can also look to when people are pulling their kids out of school, oftentimes it's because we don't have the additional staff that could help with, when we're doing inclusion and just all the things that looks like. And I hate, because, I know we've been here before, but I hate that we're sort of throwing this out now at you, but you always handle it very gracefully, I will say that. But I personally would like to see what those figures would look like if we took away the bus driver EC assistants. And sorry, that was a long way to get to what I was wanting.
Yes, Ms. Franklin.
Okay, I'm lost in the weeds here. We have an issue of paying a supplement to athletics. Is that correct? Is that what we've been talking about here? Uh-huh. I have a clarification on that. If you budget an amount of money that is supposed to cover potential positions or athletic activities, and those potential activities don't materialize, you're not gonna give that whole $44,000 to that one person that has that team. I didn't think so, but that's kind of what was spinning around here. You have this you have an amount of money set aside to potentially pay for an athletic activity that might occur in one school, but the amount of money that would go to that school would only be for that one thing, and the rest of the money would sit aside unspent.
And it would save our fund balance from being used.
Which, as you know, and I have said, is paramount in my eyes, because I have served on this little editorial here. I have served on this committee when fund balance was in question. Actually, it was tearfully in question. And I commend all of these people in the finance department and you for making fund balance not so tenuous. Okay, that athletic business has cleared up. Now let's talk about this EC business. From this conversation, I'm understanding that the only EC positions that you are curious about adding time to are those that are at PEP? Is that correct?
No, this would be, there's 146 total EC assistants in the system. I think from the number that I was given is that about 38 of them have bus driver, or serve as
Sure.
bus drivers, so that they are working a full 8-hour day, maybe
Sure.
even potential some overtime, and actually that bus driver pay is higher than the EC assistant pay. So it would be 146 minus 38, so 100,
Okay.
108 EC assistants that currently only work 7 hours and would work 8. Yeah, I did the math, Amy, so I think I got
Okay,
your number.
I got it. So Kim keeps referring to her time that she has, Ms. Clemens, keeps referring to her time as a substitute. I can refer to my time as a 30-year employee as a teacher. And having EC assistants to help with those children that needed that assistance in my classroom was paramount. However, when those children got on a bus and went home, that need for that EC assistant diminished. And I think that what we have to do is remember that assistants are paid for just that, being assistants when the need is there. So I don't want us to do this. To me, it's convoluted, and I just don't think it's right. So now that I've cleared up where I am and whatever train I didn't get on, that's my opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Franklin. Judy, yes, Mr. Martin.
I know it might snow this weekend, Clark, because I'm agreeing with Ann.
It's gonna snow, is that what you're saying?
It's gonna snow.
Let me just tell you, the blackberries are blooming.
Yeah, I know.
And we're gonna have blackberry winter, whether we want to
Whether
or not.
I agree with that. I think EC needs to be taken out for now until we get a hold of everything. I agree with Greg. We need to change the policy to give y'all the flexibility that when things like this happen, we have the money sitting there ready to do what we want it to do. With the athletic stipend, guys, I think we need to keep it because on May 6th, the Athletic Association is going to vote. And pretty much the talk on the town is they're going to approve volleyball. I mean, a budget is a budget. It says this is what we think we might spend. It doesn't mean we're going to spend it just like you do your own house. You might spend it, you might not spend it. And you had Inca, you got TC, you have Reynolds, started out with volleyball. You now probably gonna have next year Irwin. Irwin's coming up on the team, and, so you got high schools looking at it. The first thing you gotta do is find a coach. And if they looking at it and interest about it, then it's pretty much gonna happen. So we don't know if women's flag football is going to take off, but I can probably tell you how competitive women are today. On Powder Puff Day, when the schools have pep rally, who's on the field with flag football? It's the girls, and they doing it. So EC, go, everything else, stay, and see where we land in fund balance, and change the policy that we give that financing the flexibility to have the money sitting there when we have to do this again.
Tina, what would be the process if the decision is to not put that 900,000 in this budget, but in 2 months, we know more about our figures from sales tax, we know more about attrition? Would there be time to put that money into the budget and pay those people when we start the school year?
Yes, August board meeting, if you want to look at it at that point in time, or September, if there's a state budget passed, we could bring it at that point in time if we have a state budget passed and know what the true salaries are going to end up costing, because that 900,000 could be $1 million or 1,200, $1.2 million if the salaries are really up, or it could be less if they don't come across with 5% and 3%. And so we could bring that back at your directive in whatever month you want us to bring the details.
Okay, thank you for the discussion, everyone. I really appreciate it. I think we're all focused on educational outcomes the way we should be, and supporting our students and staff, and good, healthy discussion is a part of that on behalf of the board. I would ask, we're not here today. This is a working session, receiving information. I'm not making a motion here at all. Ms. Churchill did ask a valid question earlier about what would the actual, if there's 2 questions I think you asked, tell me if I'm wrong. One was, is it possible to make this shift to 8 hours optional?
Yes.
Meaning, okay, and if that's the case, do we believe that there's 38 of these assistants that are currently bus drivers and drive routes? That
Yes.
would be already working a full 8
Yes.
hours?
They are.
Okay, so would that process be where we would then say, if you are already working 8+ hours, then you obviously can't work an 8-hour EC assistant job without not driving
What
the
I would
bus?
like to do, to be fair and equitable, we've done this with some other jobs. HR would send out a letter to each one of these employees. They would say yes or no. We would have their list of their jobs. They would say yes or no if they want to add this but give up this. I would want it to be very clear and job specific for each individual, so that we would have their signed letter stating, yes, I want to be this and not do the bus driver anymore. Then we would know if that impacts bus drivers. This is also TSA that ride the bus, and subs that ride the exceptional children buses as well, not just bus drivers that are in this category. But we would send that to these staff members and let them fill out the letter identifying which way they would want to go.
But right now, our estimate is 38.
The full, that's not an estimate, that's an actual job assignment.
So that
that's
is
real.
a hard number. And then the number 12 up there above
Those are
it,
real.
that is additional to the 38?
Yes,
Okay, so that makes it 50.
yes.
All right.
And then there's
so-
7 assistant coaches. You got to add all those up. There are different people.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how assistant coaches would impact an EC assistant role, because I would assume that would
They're
be
at-
after school.
Well, EC assistants are done in 7 hours. And most of those are athletic coaches that go down to the field or wherever they're going, or the gym, and prepare and prep for the other children that are coming to be participating in the sport. So it makes them, they just have a different choice. They could
Understood.
choose if they want to, but they're getting paid a coach's stipend. for the athletic pay, and they are done within that hour that they can go on to doing coaching duties, because the kids are released. If they're at an elementary, the kids are done at 2:30, they drive over to a high school and they coach.
Yeah,
So that interferes with their drive time, that would then interfere with their start time of their practice. That's another whole, I just wanted to lay it out there, that's a different thing, but that is what's happening.
Yeah.
We have EC assistants at elementary that are coaching middle and high school.
yeah. Okay, thank you for that. So if I just use the number 50, and I just did the rough math, I think I got it right. It moves that number. If you say that those 50 people are only gonna stay at a 7-hour workday, we're not changing anything with those 50 staff. I believe the number dropped from $900,000 to $592,000 is what I just, back of the envelope here. But it's a pretty significant reduction in the total cost is where I think you were going at. I think I would like to just request that, before next Thursday, that we have some kind of better understanding of what that real math would be. And if there are other potential areas, because we're treating this as if it's like an additional, like it's a kind of an a la carte sort of situation here, and this is an additional thing, and I get that. But there could be other additional things that are in this budget that, you get my point, that we're just kind of not fully aware of, and Ms. Plemons said it earlier too, like, we're not 100% that those funds are gonna be spent. And so there's an opportunity. I feel like we've talked about this 3 years ago. We agreed as a board to do it. We said we can't do it every year until the funds are available. I've heard many times over the last 3 years about how this would positively impact the classroom, and those EC assistants would, at the end of the school day, have time to plan with their teacher, the primary teacher in the classroom. So I just would ask that maybe before next Thursday, if you could refine with your team what we think the true cost of that would be, if you remove the folks that are currently driving the bus.
The only thing we can do is guess that the full quantity of these that are listed that do other things would not do it, and I can bring you that number back. I wouldn't have time to poll, and I don't want to do that.
Don't know.
As far as, I can bring you a number based on assuming that all of these that have the extra jobs stay doing what they're doing, and I can bring you the exact payroll based on what we're projecting.
Yeah. Just in the event that during next Thursday's meeting, that would be the place where someone could make a motion to say we would move to add this particular item to the 2026, 2027 budget proposal. So a little bit more information I think would be helpful.
Okay,
Yeah.
we can do that.
Is that?
Rob,
that
can I
work?
ask
Yes.
just one last question, I promise?
Mhm.
How often in the past have we used contingency funds? I know we did last year, and I get it. I'm talking about prior to that, having $1 million set aside. How often have we needed?
Are you talking contingency or are you talking fund balance? Because we've never
No,
had,
contingency funds that you have in the budget of $1 million.
this is new. We've never had contingency in the budget.
Okay.
We've had fund balance used, and how, we're gonna end up using, we had 4.5 million to balance our budget, and based on our assumptions and no state budget this year,
That's why it's in there.
we're only gonna use about 1 to 1.5, around that this year. But it was in there because we assumed there would be a state budget, we assumed there was gonna be these things happen, because we have to budget.
Yep.
And so, we're gonna end up using about $1 million or $1.5 million of it. That's fund balance. We never set aside contingency before. This is new with the allotment model.
You're padding for just in case. If it does pass, we have
We have the
backup.
money, yeah, we have the money to
there
pay
sitting in
it.
the budget.
Okay. Any other discussions on this item? Because I think there's actually one more item on the agenda. Are we, or has
Yeah.
the allotment manual review
There is one
been
more.
touched on? Okay.
The allotment manual was handed out, and it's for you to review. You will have a board memo next Thursday to approve it, that this was part of the process for the 2-year making of getting all the positions listed and everything based on what we are building the allotment model on. But please review it by next Thursday. There'll be a board memo for you to approve it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all very, very much.
I believe we have reached the end of our content for the meeting. I want to thank everybody for all the hard work from staff, putting all of this together for us to consider, and for the board's time and staff's time this evening, going overtime by an additional hour and 50 minutes, it looks like, perhaps. So, or hour. But any closing comments? Dr. Jackson?
Thank you. I know the hour's late, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to say thank you to our Board of Education. What you've just struggled with is real. There's no question in my mind that increasing the hours of our exceptional children's instructional assistants will affect student outcomes. There is also no question in my mind that if we're not fiscally responsible, we diminish our ability to continue to serve our students, not only in 26-27, but in the years to come. We've seen this year, I shared with our administrators, 10 school systems who found themselves in financial dire straits. I can't speak to their processes, but I feel good about our process because I just observed our board struggle with real issues, understanding needs, and the need to make sure we were being fiscally responsible. I'm proud of that work. It's tough work. It's the same work that our staff has been engaged in this entire year. And so I appreciate Ms. Thorpe and the finance team and their conservative approach to our budgeting to ensure that we don't become those newspaper headlines because students are the victims when those things happen. And so thank you, board members, for struggling with this, for continuing to struggle with this. Thank you for prioritizing our students. Thank you to all of our staff for starting every single presentation over the course of the last 2 years with our strategic plan to ensure that we remain aligned to the core values of our system and this board. So again, thank you, board members, and thank you to our staff. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to share those words.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Jackson. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting. Got a motion and a second, very eagerly. With that, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, meeting is adjourned.